Chapter 1477, Unknown Adventurer Team. Chapter 1477, Unknown Adventurer Team. Not only had Zero Wing's arrival attracted the guild members' attention, but the experts Phoenix Rain and Nine Dragons Emperor had hired also turned towards these experts. Most of God's Domain's ordinary players hadn't heard of Zero Wing's experts. After all, God's Domain had only launched a few months ago, and countless guilds rose and fell each day. Most players were only familiar with the veteran large guilds that had been founded many years ago. But it was a different story for players of their caliber. They were privy to far more information than ordinary players, and they were all familiar with what kind of guild Zero Wing was. Not only had Zero Wing become Starmoon Kingdom's #1 guild early in the game, but it was also one of the Black Dragon Empire's top 6 guilds, excluding the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Some time ago, rumor had spread about Zero Wing's victory over the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Shadow Dragon Legion. The Shadow Dragon Legion was one of the guild's trump card legions and very formidable in large-scale battles. The fact that Zero Wing had defeated such a powerful force proved its extraordinary combat power. Big Sis Melody, what is the Phoenix Pavilion Master thinking? We're raiding a Grade 1 historical site, yet she invited so many players from Zero Wing? Is she so desperate for manpower? A male summoner named Lonely Fantasy asked, dissatisfied as he watched the 200 players Feng led. It was common knowledge that a Grade 2 historical site was more difficult than a 100-man Hell Mode team dungeon of the same level. Needless to say, a Grade 1 historical site would be a greater challenge. If that hadn't been the case, Phoenix Rain wouldn't have recruited so many experts. Meanwhile, the Sunset Forest only allowed each team 1,000 members per raid, yet Zero Wing had dispatched 200 members, taking 1/5 of the available slots. I doubt that. Rain might have her own ideas on the matter. Quiet Melody could not help but reveal a playful smile when she saw Zero Wing's members. But the guild is interesting. Despite knowing how important this is, it didn't dispatch most of its main force members. Most players didn't have a clear idea of Zero Wing's structure, but she did. She had thoroughly investigated the guild, memorizing almost every face in Zero Wing's main force. Although Zero Wing had sent a lot of players, Fire Dance, the main force's commander, Cola, Yi Wumian, and Turtledove, the 3 top MTs, were absent. Other important individuals such as Violet Cloud, Flying Shadow, Shadow Sword, Rampant Blade, Black Cloud, Minor Wind, and Alluring Summer weren't here either. Without these experts, Zero Wing's main force would be nothing but a joke in the various superpowers' eyes. You finally arrived. Phoenix Rain frowned as Feng's group approached. Team leader Yi Feng, do you plan to bring all of these members to the historical site? She could ignore the fact that Zero Wing hadn't mobilized all of its top experts, but the guild had gone a little too far if they expected to bring all 200 players to the Sunset Forest. It was not that she doubted Zero Wing's strength. Rather, it was impossible for the guild to gather so many players who qualified to challenge a Grade 1 historical site with its current capabilities. All of the players participating in this operation were top experts in their guilds or adventurer teams. In her opinion, only Zero Wing's main force members were qualified to stand beside them. This operation was of utmost importance. She couldn't afford to lose because of such a minor issue. Moreover, she had long since prepared the 1,000 members required for the raid. Zero Wing's members were nothing more than reinforcements. Of course, I wouldn't have brought them otherwise. Feng could hear the ire in Phoenix Rain's tone. Immediately, he explained, let me introduce you. This is Lifeless Thorn, the vice commander of the Asura adventurer team. I specifically invited Asura to help us. Hello. Lifeless Thorn nodded in greeting, confusion gripping his heart. Since when was he Asura's vice commander? Lifeless Thorn wasn't the only confused player. Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose shot Feng disdainful looks. The Asura adventure team. Phoenix Rain examined Lifeless Thorn before glancing at the cloaked players behind him. She had assumed they were from Zero Wing, but upon closer inspection, she realized that their appearances were foreign to her. She had never heard of an adventurer team called Asura. Yet, Feng had invited this unknown adventurer team to join such a crucial operation. For a moment, she was at a loss for words. Relax. I can vouch for their strength. Feng was fully aware of the questions plaguing Phoenix Rain's mind. He chuckled and said, moreover, Asura will be absolutely necessary if we want to raid Sunset Forest. When he had established the Asura Adventurer team, his goal had been to recruit the various independent experts that detested guild restrictions. Since he didn't want others to realize how closely tied the team was to Zero Wing, he had named it Asura. After all, any adventure team that had a guild behind it would struggle to recruit members. In addition, Zero Wing's enemies might target Asura, which would be a detriment to the adventurer team's development. He intended to develop Asura separate from Zero Wing. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's operation was a good opportunity for Asura to make a name for itself in God's domain, creating a foundation for the adventurer team to grow. With this, he could save himself the trouble of trying to promote the team secretly. Since they had Feng's vote of confidence, Phoenix Rain sized up the berserker before her. Although the black cloak hid Lifeless Thorn's name and level, it did nothing to conceal his killing intent. Even she felt slightly threatened when subjected to this stranger's aura. As for the purple spear on Lifeless Thorn's back, although he had hidden the weapon's glow effect, she guessed that it was at least dark gold rank based on the design on the shaft and the small arcs of electricity dancing around it. It was very likely that the spear was, in fact, an epic weapon. The black cloak hid most of the berserker's equipment as well, but after a close look, she noticed that every piece had a unified theme. In addition, a distinct pattern flowed from one piece to the next. Its glow proved that it was dark gold rank, proving that Lifeless Thorn wore a dark gold set equipment. Moreover, it was an 8-piece set. The level 40, 8-piece barbarian set? Phoenix Rain guessed. No, the barbarian set is silver. This one is crimson. Could it be a level 45 dark gold set equipment? When Phoenix Rain considered the possibility of this man wearing an 8-piece, level 45 dark gold set equipment, the gaze she gave the berserker changed. Although the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had level 45 dark gold set equipment as well, the guild had only collected a dozen or so 6-piece sets. Naturally, they weren't as strong as an 8-piece set. The fact that an adventurer team had obtained such a set, in addition to an epic weapon, proved Asura's prowess. Fine, have it your way. We'll enter the Sunset Forest together. Phoenix Rain still questioned Feng's claim, but when she thought about her agreement with the man, she gave in. However, we need to finish the raid as soon as possible. Nine Dragons Emperor has invited Bloody Paradise. I've heard that they helped the Nine Heavens Pavilion raid a Grade 2 historical site. They should know what they're doing. Bloody Paradise? Hearing this, Feng could not help but turn towards Nine Dragons Emperor's group. He quickly spotted Undead, Bloody Paradise's commander. Bloody Paradise had been a top adventurer team in his previous life. Although it hadn't achieved as much as the Midnight Tea Party had, the adventurer team had been absurdly powerful. This was especially true for the adventurer team's commander, Undead. He had been a madman who had dared to kill a super guild's leader and countless players from the Midnight Tea Party. Eventually, however, the various super guilds and Midnight Tea Party had hunted the man down, removing him from God's domain entirely. In any case, we need to raid the Sunset Forest as fast as possible. If you need recovery items, let me know, Phoenix Rain offered as she glanced at the time. Only a few minutes were left before the Sunset Forest opened, and even though Feng now knew about Bloody Paradise's participation, nothing had changed. All they could do was rest up and prepare for the raid. When Nine Dragons Emperor's players saw Zero Wing's members join Phoenix Rain's forces, they laughed. Phoenix Rain has lost her mind. She actually let Zero Wing bring 200 members. Blood Dragon, the guild leader of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's branch guild in the Black Dragon Empire, could not help but laugh when he looked at the opponent's team composition. Have you looked into these 200 members yet? Nine Dragons Emperor asked as he glanced at Feng's group. Although he didn't think that Zero Wing could make much of a difference, there was no harm in being cautious. After all, this raid was incredibly important. I sent someone to probe for information. Among those 200 players, 100 belong to Zero Wing, while the other 100 are from an adventurer team called Asura. Unfortunately, we don't know anything about this adventurer team. My guess is that they've only recently established. Many of Phoenix Rain's experts aren't happy about the situation, Blood Dragon reported, chuckling. A new adventurer team? The news stunned Nine Dragons Emperor, but after a moment, he laughed uncontrollably. Phoenix Rain is trying her best to sabotage herself. Have someone leak the information to those obstinate elders. Let them know who they should truly support. Understood. Blood Dragon began to compile the information and sent his subordinates to spread rumors. The last few minutes passed quickly. When the Sunset Forest activated, both Phoenix Rain and Nine Dragons Emperor retrieved a silver crystal ball from their bags at almost the same time, shattering it. The crystal balls then opened a spatial tunnel that allowed Phoenix Rain and Nine Dragon Emperor's teams to enter. Very quickly, 2,000 players entered their respective spatial tunnels, vanishing from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's residence. A breath later, the spatial tunnels also disappeared. Chapter 1478, Asura's Edge. Chapter 1478, Asura's Edge. When Feng entered the spatial tunnel, a glaring light blinded him for a moment. When his vision recovered, he noticed that he stood in a familiar, yet foreign location. System. You have discovered the historical site, Sunset Forest. System. You will be teleported out of the Sunset Forest automatically after 8 hours. It seems we've gotten pretty lucky. We were actually teleported to the werewolf zone. After taking a quick look around him, Feng had a general grasp of their location. A historical site was like a special secret land. It only opened at certain times. Players had to complete the key quest each time they wanted to enter a particular historical site. In addition, players would be teleported to different locations every time they entered. The Sunset Forest was massive, no smaller than a leveling map. The map was divided into 8 zones, and each time players entered the historical site, they'd be teleported to one of the areas randomly. Naturally, each area's danger would also differ. Among the 8 areas, the werewolf zone was considered the easiest to get through. Each of the Sunset Forest's 8 zones offered varying challenges. For example, the swamp zone would drag players down, drowning those who weren't careful. In the stone forest zone, players weren't able to use spells. The darkness and hail zones were the most dangerous. Random orbs of ice would rain down in the hail zone, claiming players' lives. In the darkness zone, players could only see 8 yards around them, making them easy targets for monster ambushes. The reason the werewolf zone was considered the easiest was that its main threat came in the form of a larger monster population. The zone's monsters were also quite organized. All 8 zones had one thing in common. They eventually led to the Sunset Forest Center. However, players didn't often get that far. Once the team was accounted for, they adjusted the team's formation. Phoenix Rain sent scouting parties of assassins and rangers ahead to determine their next move. Unlike dungeons, players didn't have access to a system map in historical sites. They had to explore the available routes. This was also why the system gave them 8 hours to clear the ruin. If a team wasn't careful, they could venture into a different zone, bypassing the historical site's core. After 15 minutes or so, the scouting parties reported back with what they had discovered. When Phoenix Rain read the reports, she was astonished. So, this is a Grade 1 historical site. Phoenix Rain frowned deeply at the reports. Their current location was extremely dangerous. Based on the scouting party's investigation, they were surrounded by werewolf caps. Moreover, a large number of werewolves patrolled the various paths leading to the Sunset Forest's core. If they tried to advance, they'd march straight into these werewolves' den. 30 werewolf squads patrolled the straightest path to the core, and each patrol consisted of around 100 monsters, led by at least one Great Lord. The more powerful patrol squads were commanded by Grand Lords. Even the weakest werewolf in the zone was a chieftain, and they were all level 52 and above. Dealing with one werewolf patrol squad would be difficult and time-consuming, much less dealing with 30. Furthermore, if they weren't careful and disturbed any of the nearby camps, they'd be overrun. Each werewolf camp had at least 11 Grand Lords, including a specialized Grand Lord. Attempting to face such a force would be suicidal. After several evolutions to God's domain, even monsters of the same rank had varying levels of strength. Monsters that failed to evolve properly tended to upgrade a portion of their basic attributes first, such as their strength, agility, and defense. These monsters were known as specialized bosses. They were much stronger than bosses of the same rank and level, but they were extremely rare. Once they knew what they were up against, even Quiet Melody was shocked. She had raided a Grade 2 historical site in the past, but compared to this Grade 1 ruin, that experience had been child's play. Even extremely rare specialized bosses were common here. Although players would only lose 20% of their EXP if they died in the ruin, it would add up after multiple deaths. I see why they say that historical sites are even more difficult than 100-man Hell Mode team dungeons. This Grade 1 historical site really knows how to render players powerless. Phoenix Rain smiled bitterly. She then turned to Feng and asked, Team Leader Feng, do you have a way to break through? I don't have any ideas either. We'll have to fight our way through, Feng stated. Players in other areas might be able to rely on their wit to overcome the zone's challenges, but the werewolf zone didn't offer that option. The only way to the core was to kill their way there. Fight our way through? Phoenix Rain rolled her eyes at Feng. She had asked him precisely because that wasn't possible. Since we don't have other options, I guess we have no choice but to use the 4 Tier 3 summoning scrolls earlier than expected. To raid the Sunset Forest, she had prepared plenty of trump cards. However, she hadn't expected to use them so soon after entering the historical site. No one else on the team voiced an opinion either. With their team's strength, fighting 30 werewolf patrol squads was pushing it. They'd have to face over 20 level 55 Great Lords and several level 55 Grand Lords. There were thousands of weaker monsters as well. If they had 4 Tier 3 summon creatures to hold off the Grand Lords while they defeated the rest of the monsters, they might have a chance of making it through. It's too wasteful to use Tier 3 summoning scrolls right now, Feng commented as he stopped Phoenix Rain. That's easy for you to say. How are we supposed to get past the Grand Lords if we don't use the Tier 3 summon creatures to distract them? Lonely Fantasy snapped, clicking his tongue when he heard Feng. However, Quiet Melody quickly silenced Lonely Fantasy, turning to Feng. May I know if Elder Feng has a different plan? We'll just force our way through, Feng stated. For a moment, the team fell silent. If they could force their way through, they wouldn't need to use the Tier 3 summoning scrolls. Yet when they saw the look in Feng's eyes, they knew he was serious. They were stunned. Team Leader Feng, what about the Grand Lords? Phoenix Rain asked when she saw the man's expression. The Asura Adventurer team will distract the Grand Lords in our path. Everyone else can worry about the other monsters as we advance, Feng explained. Leave them to Asura? Phoenix Rain shot Lifeless Thorn a glance. Based on the scouts' reports, for Grand Lords guarded the easiest path. A measly 100-man team could never deal with 4 Grand Lords at once. Besides, other monsters littered the area. We don't have any problems with it, Lifeless Thorn declared. Initially, he had wanted to veto the idea, but Feng had sent him a whisper, instructing him to agree. With no other choice, he did as he was told. Hearing Lifeless Thorn's lack of hesitation, Quiet Melody and the others were stunned. None of them had ever heard of the Asura Adventurer team before today, yet the team claimed that they could distract 4 level 55 Grand Lords. This was simply inconceivable. After some reluctance, Phoenix Rain eventually agreed and said, "All right then. Let's try it. If we fail, I'll use the Tier 3 summoning scrolls to assist you." Following which, the team prepared to move out. Meanwhile, Feng made his own secret arrangements. 9, you'll tank 2 Grand Lords. Madness, you'll tank one of the remaining 2, and I'll take the last. Healers, focus on the 2 MTs, Feng whispered to Asura's members. I'm dealing with 2. Solitary 9 was beginning to grow nervous. Relax, Feng said, chuckling. After all, he had lent Solitary 9 the epic ranked Titan Guard. The man was also a level 53 shield warrior wearing an 8-piece, level 45, dark gold set equipment. If he couldn't hold his ground against 2 Grand Lords, he didn't deserve the equipment. A moment later, the 1,000-man team moved out under Feng's command. First, he sent the scouting parties to lure Grand Lord's werewolf patrol squads to Asura's members. He instructed the rest of the team to focus on moving towards Sunset Forest's core. Every player in this raid was an expert. They had long since grown used to luring powerful bosses. It wasn't long before the scouts ran back with 4 werewolf patrol squads behind them. Go! Feng commanded when he saw the oncoming monsters. Taking the lead, Solitary 9 ran up to one of the Grand Lord-ranked werewolf captains and executed a shield bash. He then activated Charge on another werewolf captain. In seconds, he had aggroed 2 werewolf captains. Werewolf Captain, humanoid creature, Grand Lord. Level 55. HP 72000000/72000000. Well. The two werewolf captains howled in anger as they swung their clubs at the shield warrior. Pung! Pung! Both clubs struck Solitary Nine's shield, emitting two loud buzzing sounds. 2 damages of over -10,000 appeared above the Solitary Nine's head, devouring nearly 2/5 of the man's HP. Fortunately, the 4 healers in the rear restored him back to full. How is this possible? As Phoenix Rain and the others fought their way towards the distant core, they were stunned when they saw the scene. Chapter 1479, Brutish Team. Chapter 1479, Brutish Team. How did he do that? Did he activate a life-saving skill? Lonely Castle gaped at the recovered Solitary Nine. Everyone who had underestimated the Asura adventurer team was stupefied. Normally, the strength of a team's MT was synonymous to the team's overall strength. Solitary Nine's performance proved that Asura's claim of being a powerful adventurer team was clearly more than just arrogance. Even the game's current top-tier MTs would lose more than 15,000 HP against a casual attack from a level 55 Grand Lord. It was the equivalent of 1/3 of most MT's HP, yet Solitary Nine had only sustained a little over -10,000 HP from each werewolf captain's attack, which totaled less than 2/5 of his total HP. However, their shock after seeing the damage Solitary Nine had received was nothing compared to what they felt after watching the man block both attacks with his shield. While their respective guilds' top-ranking MTs could block a level 55 Grand Lord's attacks as well, it normally took several MTs working together. If they sent a single MT to tank the Grand Lord, they'd send the player to his death. Even when a peak MT blocked an attack from a Grand Lord of the same level, they'd stiffen momentarily from the impact. The outcome was the same when the MT used a defensive technique. If MTs didn't deal with the momentary stiffness properly, the Grand Lord could use its high attack speed to break through their defenses, landing a direct hit. Even with a group of dedicated healers, most MTs wouldn't survive the hit. Hence, teams usually sent in multiple MTs to manage the boss's attacks and dampen the resulting impacts. Yet, Solitary Nine had blocked attacks from 2 werewolf captains, and by the looks of it, he had energy to spare. It was inconceivable. However, Solitary Nine was more surprised than anyone. Isn't this shield a little too powerful? Solitary Nine could not help but glance at the crescent shield on his arm. He couldn't believe that he had just blocked 2 Great Lord's attacks without slowing in the least. Elsewhere, Dark Madness had secured his own werewolf captain. Although he had a harder time than Solitary Nine, with his 8-piece dark gold set equipment, he held his ground as he focused on his defense. Naturally, Feng had little trouble with his boss. Although he wasn't an MT, his attributes rivaled a Grand Lord's of the same level. At level 60, distracting a Grand Lord that was 5 levels lower than him was a piece of cake. With the 4 werewolf captains distracted, the rest of the team had an easier time dealing with the remaining werewolves. Every player that Phoenix Rain had recruited for the operation was a top-tier expert. The MTs were more than capable of holding their ground against a level 55 Great Lord, let alone High Lord-ranked monsters and below. With the MTs forming a wall around the team, the various DPS classes launched frenzied attacks at the werewolves in their way. Hundreds of spells and arrows rained down on the werewolves, killing a few chieftain-ranked werewolves instantly. As the patrol squads thinned, the team slowly advanced. Melee players assist the MTs. Ranged players prioritize the werewolves directly in front of us. Don't waste your attacks. Healers coordinate and make sure there aren't any long breaks between heals on the MTs. Phoenix Rain commanded hurriedly as more werewolves converged on their location. Don't. Prioritize the werewolf captains and ignore the mobs. Feng interjected. The mobs are increasing by the minute. If we don't clear them out soon, we won't be able to move forward. Quiet Melody snapped as she glanced at the approaching werewolf squads. She strongly disapproved of Feng's plan. It would take too long to kill the Grand Lords. They simply had too much HP. Rather than targeting the Grand Lords, they should focus on killing the weaker monsters. That way, they could break through the blockade sooner than later. I have a plan to deal with the mobs. For now, prioritize the werewolf captains, Feng said, chuckling. Even the weakest of these werewolves have several million HP. If they swarm us, the MTs won't be able to hold them back, Quiet Melody growled when she saw the swordsman's calm expression. His plan wouldn't be an issue if they were fighting common or elite monsters, but the werewolves coming at them were chieftain rank and above. Even if they bombarded those monsters with one AoE spell after another, it would do little to thin their numbers. Only large-scale destruction spells would be useful. Even then, the spells would be of limited help. If they didn't get rid of these monsters soon, the werewolves would overwhelm the team. But before Quiet Melody could respond, Phoenix Rain got ahead of her and said, "All right. You have command of the team now, Feng." "Rain, this is too risky." Quiet Melody spun towards her friend in confusion and shock. "I know, but I want to see what tricks he's got up his sleeve. If things go south, I have a backup plan," the Phoenix Pavilion Master softly explained. While Quiet Melody had been correct about needing to deal with the weaker monsters first, there was an issue with her plan. If they ignored the 4 Grand Lords and advanced, the pressure on the team would only increase as they moved forward and more werewolf patrol squads joined the fight. On the off chance that they came across another Grand Lord squad, the team would be annihilated. Hence, prioritizing the werewolf captains was a sound idea. In addition, she could use the opportunity to gauge Zero Wing's strength. Once Phoenix Rain handed Feng the leadership rights, he instructed the team to focus their fire on the werewolf captain in front of him. Although the werewolf captain had 72 million HP, its HP steadily decreased as hundreds of players bombarded the monster. Most of the team members dealt around -5,000 damage, occasionally dealing double that due to critical hits. Gentle Snow, Aqua Rose, Zhaoyueru, and Lifeless Thorn, however, dealt over -10,000 damage on average. They even dealt several times that every now and again. Aqua Rose's damage was particularly frightening. She was already a Tier 2 player, and after she gained the Sea Dragon Staff, her Tier 2 spells had gained the power of Tier 3, each capable of dealing several 100,000 damage. Zhaoyueru had a similar benefit with her staff. Despite only being a Tier 1 player, her spells were on par with Tier 2 spells. With Feng distracting the werewolf captain, both women could attack freely, dominating the team's damage output ranking and leaving the rest of the players in their dust. Crap, this is insane. Their combined damage is more than the next 7 players combined. So this is Zero Wing. Aqua Rose and Zhaoyueru's damage stupefied many of the team's experts. Even Lifeless Thorn and his companions from Asura were surprised. They had never dreamed that Zero Wing was this powerful. It wasn't long before one werewolf captain after another fell. However, a tremendous number of werewolves had converged on the team's location. The monsters had already blocked the path ahead, making advancement impossible. "Good. Aqua, Yueru, you two can begin." Feng shouted as he glanced at the clogged path ahead. He then switched the aura of wind for the aura of fire. Aqua Rose and Zhaoyueru exchanged smiles as they cast the Tier 2 spells. Rising Flow and Frost Flame held simultaneously. Meanwhile, Feng activated Flame Domain. Suddenly, the werewolves blocking the path screamed in pain as their HPs plummeted. In seconds, they turned to dust. When the spells dissipated, only a small portion of the werewolves remained. Every chieftain-ranked werewolf had been eliminated, and the lord-ranked werewolves had less than half of their HPs remaining. For a moment, both players and werewolves had fallen silent. Chapter 1480, Historical Sites Treasure. Chapter 1480, Historical Sites Treasure. What destructive power. Am I seeing things? All of the chieftains are dead. An indescribable shock overwhelmed the team members as they stared at the clearing in the enemy lines. Moreover, after the deaths of so many werewolves, everyone's experience bars had risen by a significant chunk. They still have 3 large-scale destruction spells of such power despite so many of their main force members missing? Quiet Melody stared at Feng on the front line in confusion. The various large guilds constantly searched for large-scale destruction spells, but such spells were extremely rare. Even a super guild like the Sacred Temple only had 30-plus players who could wield such power, and she was one of them. Players and guilds who didn't fully understand large-scale destruction spells treated them like war weapons or powerful tools to use when grinding monsters. Only players who had large-scale destruction spells knew that there were differences even among them. An ordinary large-scale destruction spell might be useful against players, But even 3 of such spells might not be enough to kill level 50+ chieftain-ranked monsters and above. Only curse-grade large-scale destruction spells could achieve the feat, however. Such curses were even harder to find. In the Sacred Temple, only 6 players possessed such curses, and the guild's upper echelons fought over every one of them. Quiet Melody found it hard to believe that, despite the majority of Zero Wing's main force missing, the guild could still employ 3 curse-grade, large-scale destruction spells. It's no wonder why Yifeng claimed that we can clear the Sunset Forest. It seems he had hidden his guild's true power. Phoenix Rain shook her head and smiled bitterly at the empty plot of land before her. Curse-grade large-scale destruction spells were extremely useful when raiding a dungeon. It was especially true as players took on the dungeon bosses. Although she had prepared her own curse, that was it. None of her subordinates wielded such a spell. She had never expected to see 3 players from Zero Wing use one. The path ahead is clear. Everyone charge. Ranged players, use your control skills on the monsters. Don't let them fill the gap. Feng shouted in the team chat. If Tier 1 players tried to grind all of the Werewolf Zone's monsters until they reached the Sunset Forest's core, they'd never reach it. The only way through this zone was to run, avoid as many battles as possible, and only stop when they came across a Grand Lord. The Werewolf Patrol squad respawned very quickly. Moreover, their hunting range extended throughout the zone. If they discovered players, the werewolves would chase them to the ends of the earth. Fortunately, Feng's command snapped everyone out of their daze, and the team began to advance. With the team's MTs on the front lines and everyone following closely behind, the team soon broke through the werewolves' blockade. Although the team had encountered plenty of werewolves as they moved, they hadn't run into any Grand Lords. Hence, the MTs had remained within their block limits. Including their mobile turrets, such as Zhao Yueru and Aqua Rose, the team knocked aside the Grand Lord-ranked werewolves that had stood in their path. This allowed everyone to approach the ruins' core relatively easily. After a little over 4 hours, Phoenix Rain's team reached the isolated area separating the werewolf zone and the center of the Sunset Forest. Some players had even leveled up during the past 4 hours. Those who hadn't had seen a 30% rise in their experience bars. These players were a little reluctant to leave the werewolf zone after realizing their leveling speed. Big Sis Melody, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion has pretty good luck. Although the Sunset Forest is a Grade 1 historical site, it's much easier than the Grade 2 historical site we previously raided. Even after gathering so many experts, the Sacred Temple had only reached the core after using all of our allotted time. Lonely Fantasy enviously commented as he gazed at the dense forest before them, which was currently protected by a magic barrier. Unfortunately, despite all of the EXP they had obtained, the historical site's monsters hadn't dropped any loot. To secure a historical site's treasure, they had to search its core. With over 3 hours remaining, they could recover some of the Sunset Forest's items, even if they failed to clear it. In contrast, when the Sacred Temple had raided the Grade 2 historical site, they hadn't returned with anything. To top it off, they had team-wiped twice. Easy. Quiet Melody glanced at the werewolf army standing near the edge of the isolation area before turning towards Feng, who had sat down to rest. It seems I'll need to report to the guild leader. Their journey might have seemed easy, so much so that Phoenix Rain hadn't had to use a single trump card she had prepared for this trip. But they had only come this far due to Feng's efficient command and Zero Wing's incredible DPS. If the Sacred Temple hired Zero Wing to raid historical sites in the future, their chances of success would increase tremendously. After the team rested for a bit, they marched towards the protected forest ahead of them. The moment they pushed through the magic barrier, they felt as if a great weight had dropped on their shoulders. They also struggled to concentrate. Everyone, be careful when we face the monsters in this area. The mana here is very thin, and the gravity is 3 times that of other zones, Feng warned his companions in the team chat. Scouting parties, be wary of traps as you explore ahead. Report back immediately if you spot monsters. The Sunset Forest's mana was paper-thin. After factoring in the high gravity, players would struggle to display their full combat power in this area. Even experts would be fortunate to exhibit 60 or 70% of their total combat power. Ordinary players might not even display 30%. Fortunately, the core didn't have many monsters. Each group the team encountered only consisted of several hundred forest dryads. Meanwhile, the strongest among these dryads was a level 58 Grand Lord, whereas the weakest were level 55 lords. While exploring the Sunset Forest, the team annihilated over a dozen dryad groups. They had discovered 3 dryad nests as well, each of which was like a miniature treasure trove. Although numerous dryads protected these nests, the strongest fortified nest they had found only had 6 Grand Lords and a single specialized Grand Lord. Seeing the potential harvest she could obtain from these nests, Phoenix Rain used all 6 Tier 3 summoning scrolls she had prepared. Each summoning scroll had a 3-hour duration, just long enough to last them until their time in the Sunset Forest came to an end. With the 6 Tier 3 summoned creatures, Solitary 9, and Dark Madness tanking the Grand Lords, the team swiftly cleared out the dryad nests, taking roughly 30 minutes to do so. Meanwhile, each of the nests they found had contained over 30 treasure chests, the lowest rank of which was Secret Silver, while the best they had found thus far was a dark gold treasure chest. After raiding 3 dryad nests, the team had obtained 11 dark gold treasure chests and 43 fine gold treasure chests. In addition, the team had found various materials the dryads had collected. Among the materials, they had found precious ancient origin wood. Even Quiet Melody was a little jealous. The Sunset Forest was a level 50 to level 60 historical site. Needless to say, its treasure chests would drop level 50 to 60 weapons and equipment. At this stage of the game, level 50 plus, fine gold equipment was still incredibly rare, much less dark gold rank. "Commander, we've discovered something," a scouting party suddenly reported. "It looks like a dryad nest, but there's a shrine inside it. A lot of dryads are patrolling the nest, too. I don't think we can investigate further without being detected." "Good. We'll make our way there right away." Feng was ecstatic. The scouting party had found the Sunset Shrine. The Sunset Shrine hid most of the Sunset Forest's treasure, but its location wasn't static. The shrine's location would differ each time the Sunset Forest activated. Every time players teleported to the historical site, they'd have to search for the Sunset Shrine all over again. Feng quickly led the team to the Sunset Shrine, but when they arrived, they gasped at what they saw. How is this possible? Didn't the record say that Grade 1 historical site's final boss is supposed to be a Grand Lord ranked archaic species? Phoenix Rain unconsciously balled her fists when she saw at the gigantic, living tree blocking the distant shrine. When everyone saw this massive treant, they could not help but shudder. The giant tree was the Sunset Forest's final boss, but its rank wasn't what they had expected. Rather than a Grand Lord, the treant was a mythic monster. The King of Trees. Chapter 1481, Challenging the King of Trees. Chapter 1481, Challenging the King of Trees. Why is it a mythic monster? Is the system toying with us? When everyone saw the colossal tree looming over 100 meters above them, their relaxed, confident expressions vanished. Even Quiet Melody, a Vice Temple Master from the Super Guild, Sacred Temple, could not help her grim expression. King of Trees, Plant Lifeform Mythic. Level 60. HP 600,000/600,000,000. Just looking at the King of Trees sent shivers down her spine. Even before the fight began, the pressure of King of Trees' intense aura weighed down on her. This was only the tip of the iceberg. What truly made her feel powerless was the thick tendrils extending from the Trent's body. The Grand Lord-ranked Dryad they had previously faced had only wielded 4 tendrils, each possessing 60% of the Dryad's strength, yet the King of Trees has 12 tendrils. She wouldn't have worried if the tendrils had 60% of a Grand Lord's strength, but against 60% of a level 60 mythic monsters, even Tier 3 summoned creatures would be defenseless, much less players. Moreover, a large number of Dryads accompanied the King of Trees. At a glance, Quiet Melody counted over 200 Dryads, including 6 Grand Lords and 60 Great Lords. All of the Dryads were clustered together, so attacking one might lure the whole group. Even Phoenix Rain and Quiet Melody, who had survived countless raids and battles, couldn't help their despair. "Rain, let's give up on the King of Trees. It's simply too powerful. We can't raid that boss right now," Quiet Melody advised her friend, who had been silent all this time. "We still have plenty of time left. We can raid other Dryad nests. We don't need to waste our time here." The best part about historical sites was their plethora of treasure-laden locations. Although the quantity and quality of treasures they would find in other dryad nests couldn't compare to those in the Sunset Shrine, they'd walk away with far more than what they'd find in a 100-man Hell Mode team dungeon. I understand, Phoenix Rain responded, reluctance filling her eyes as she watched the King of Trees. She knew that trying to fight that thing would be suicidal. Not even the numerous trump cards she had prepared would help her against the mythic-ranked King of Trees. Immediately, she issued a command in the team chat: everyone rest up. Scouting parties, continue your search for other dryad nest. Just as the scouting parties prepared to head out in search, Feng shouted, "Hold on a minute. Does he have a plan?" Phoenix Rain could not help but turn towards the swordsman. How can he? The surrounding, high-tiered dryads will be difficult enough to clear out, not to mention the King of Trees. Not even 6 Tier 3 summon creatures can hold up against the boss's tendrils. Without anyone tanking the tendrils, it'll only be a matter of time before we're annihilated, Quiet Melody argued. While she acknowledged that they had only made it this far so easily thanks to Feng's leadership and ingenuity, she couldn't bring herself to believe that they had a chance against the King of Trees. Compared to the 3 dryad nests they had already exterminated, raiding the King of Trees would be a nightmare. The boss wasn't a foe that they could defeat with good leadership and strategy. They also needed to be strong enough, and it was obvious that their team wasn't. I'll admit, I didn't expect the King of Trees to be a mythic monster. However, it isn't exactly impossible to defeat. I just need to adjust my original plan, Feng explained. He, too, was surprised to see the boss's mythic rank. When he had come here in his previous life, the King of Trees had only been a Grand Lord-ranked archaic species with a unique bloodline. This time, however, the raid would be twice as difficult. The King of Trees was also set to face a team of 1,000 players. Although its strength was no match for the Titan warriors, it had far more HP. It would undoubtedly be more difficult to raid just due to its battle recovery, which would heal it for 6 million HP every 5 seconds. The boss is a mythic monster, yet he only needs to adjust his plan to defeat it? For a moment, Quiet Melody wondered if she had heard wrong. She had encountered mythic-ranked bosses before, and she was certain that they were invincible to current players. Without siege weapons and disregarding all cost, the team had 0 chances of defeating a mythic boss. Unfortunately, historical sites were similar to dungeons in that siege weapons were prohibited. Otherwise, the various large guilds wouldn't suffer such massive headaches when dealing with 100-man Hell Mode and super large-scale team dungeons. Whatever plan you have in mind, tell us. If we have any hope, we'll give it a try. Although Phoenix Rain doubted their chances of defeating the King of Trees, she knew Feng's personality. The man had never lied to her, so she was inclined to listen to him before dismissing his ideas. In any case, it was better than outright giving up. Rain, you. Quiet Melody was at a loss for words when she saw the slightly excited expression on Phoenix Rain's face. Fine, do whatever you want, but we're only giving it one try. If we fail, we'll search for other dryad nests. How could a mythic monster possibly be an easy foe? Even the various superpowers in God's domain were utterly helpless against these monsters. They were all forced to take the long way around when they found one. If it were possible to raid mythic monsters, they would have started their raids on the super large-scale team dungeons already. Thank you, Phoenix Rain offered. Quiet Melody was only helping her as a good friend and hadn't asked for any payment for the work. If the woman didn't want to do something, she wouldn't force her. Unfortunately, if Quiet Melody decided not to participate in the fight against the King of Trees, the team would lose a large fraction of its firepower. Before this, I'd like to sign a new contract, Phoenix Pavilion Master. Our previous agreement didn't include a mythic-ranked final boss, Feng said as he handed Phoenix Rain a new contract. Most of the contents hadn't changed. Zero Wing would still obtain 20% of the harvest. The only difference was that after the raid, Zero Wing would have priority when choosing 5 items from the Sunset Shrine. While Feng could ignore the treasures a Grand Lord-ranked archaic species guarded, it was a different story for items under a mythic monster's protection. Renew our contract? Phoenix Rain read through the new contract. Shortly after, she said, I don't have any problems with this as long as we clear the Sunset Shrine. Although Feng's demands were high, it was much better than leaving empty-handed. Each of the 3 dryad nests they had already raided had contained over 100 precious items, excluding the material stashes in each nest. Needless to say, the Sunset Shrine hid far more items of even higher quality. Following which, the 2 players signed the contract. Once Feng ensured that everything was in order, he began to pull flame potions from his bag. Normally, players had very little use for these potions. Moreover, they weren't meant to be consumed. Rather, they acted as a type of chemical bomb. The flame potions only had one purpose: weakening plant life forms. The effects could also stack up to 100 times, reducing the targeted plant life form's attributes, defense, and resistances by 30% and increasing the damage from fire-type attacks by 100%. After 2 days of grinding, Aqua Rose and the others had gathered 100 flame potions. The flame potions hadn't been particularly valuable in the past, but once the public had discovered the Sunset Forest, their prices had skyrocketed. They had become a priceless tool for dealing with plant life forms. After distributing the potions, Feng had everyone lure the dryads around the King of Trees, quickly eliminating the mobs. Without the threats around the boss, Feng delegated tasks. Assassins, when the raid begins, toss these flame potions at the boss. For those controlling the 6 summoned creatures, try to block as many of the boss's tendrils as possible. Ranged players, use your spells and skills instead of normal attacks as much as possible. Melee players, stay away from the summoned creatures and find opportunities to strike. MTs split into 6-man groups. Each group will tank 1 main tendril and should have only 2 MTs with active berserk and life-saving skills at a time, Feng instructed. After a few minutes of planning, the assassins and MTs nervously moved into position. Lifeless Thorn and his companions from Asura were particularly anxious. They were already familiar with a mythic monster's prowess. Without a magic array to weaken the boss, it could instant kill any player. Team leader Feng, everyone is in position, Phoenix Rain reported. Good. 9, begin the raid. Feng commanded. Chapter 1482, Frightening Tier 4 Spell. Chapter 1482, Frightening Tier 4 Spell. Hearing Feng's command, Solitary 9 took another look at the towering treant before him before lifting his shield and charging at the creature. Is it really okay to let him start the raid by himself? Phoenix Rain asked worriedly as she watched Solitary 9 approach the King of Trees. Shouldn't we send someone to assist him and split the damage? Solitary 9 looked like an ant before the King of Trees, and the difference between their attributes was just as massive. Even a Tier 3 summoned creature would sustain heavy injuries and lose a good portion of its attributes if struck by all 12 of the boss's tendrils, not to mention a peak MT. No, 9 is more than strong enough for this task, Feng said, chuckling. Although the King of Trees' rank had changed, its skills and attack pattern wouldn't differ. This boss always used the Tier 3 skill, Thorn Smash, on its first target. This move could even wound a Tier 3 summoned creature of the same level, much less a player. Tier 3 summoned creatures were a precious source of combat power for the team right now, so they couldn't afford to risk them needlessly. In the past, teams had usually sent a player sacrifice to take on Thorn Smash before sending the MTs in. Fortunately, Solitary 9 wielded the epic ranked Titan Guard. They didn't need to waste combat power by sacrificing a player. The moment the Shield Warrior moved within the King of Trees' 200-yard perception range, the mythic monster's 12 tendrils transformed into sharp spears and shot towards Solitary 9. The spears were so fast that they looked like 12 streaks of green light as they moved. Thorn Smash. So fast. The sudden attack surprised Solitary 9, but Feng had warned him to activate Titans the moment he was within range. When Titans activated golden, divine runes swam across Solitary 9's body. The Shield Warrior's eyes had turned a dark gold as well. Once Titans took effect, Solitary 9 was able to shake off the King of Trees' mental pressure as he received a significant boost. Due to the upgrade to epic rank, Titans will now reduce the damage he received by 90%. The skill also increased his attack speed by 100% and movement speed by 30%. His starting movement speed was set to 80% of his maximum movement speed, and the skill now lasted 20 seconds rather than 15. Before the King of Trees' main tendrils reached Solitary 9, he skillfully maneuvered his shield, leaving afterimages as it shifted before the shield warrior. Despite its relatively small size, the shield felt like a wall, enclosing Solitary 9 within. In the end, he fended off all 12 strikes. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions echoed throughout the forest, making the distant players' scalps tingle. He's still alive? How is this possible? He actually survived. As the dust settled, it revealed Solitary 9. The man hadn't moved an inch, and he still had roughly 10% of his HP. What destructive power! Solitary 9 gasped when he realized that he still had 6,000 HP. Sure enough, current players have no hope against a mythic monster. Despite blocking every attack with his shield and the 90% damage reduction from Titan's Will, he had lost over 50,000 HP. Even if he had activated a life-saving skill, the attack would have killed him instantly if he hadn't activated Titan's Will. Meanwhile, the King of Trees followed up with another tendril attack. Crap! Heal him! Phoenix Rain hurriedly shouted. Unfortunately, the team's healers were a little too slow. Before they had begun to cast their spells, the tendril had reached Solitary 9. However, with Titan's Will still in effect, Solitary 9's shield moved as if it could teleport, appearing between the tendril and the shield warrior almost instantly. Pung! A crisp clang reverberated as Solitary 9 was forced to retreat by 3 steps before stabilizing himself. His HP decreased once again, minus 3,208. Even after another hit, he's still alive. The watching players gaped at Solitary 9. Surviving a mythic boss's skill was already impressive, yet he had only received a little over minus 3,000 damage after blocking a normal attack. His defense was ridiculous. Finally, the healers in the back responded and restored Solitary 9 to half of his total HP, yanking him out of the danger zone. Good. Everyone move in. Feng commanded. The 6 Tier 3 summoned creatures dashed forward. The assassins, who had been in stealth all this time, also dashed at the King of Trees. Once they were within 40 yards of the boss, they threw their flame potions at the mythic monster. When the potion bottles shattered and coated the King of Trees' trunk, its sturdy bark ignited. By the time all 100 flame potions struck the King of Trees, the mythic monster had transformed into a bonfire. Roar! The King of Trees bellowed and groaned as its basic attributes rapidly fell, and the pressure on Solitary 9 decreased. Now, he only received around minus 2,000 damage when blocking the mythic monster's normal attacks. Now, he could even withstand an attack from all 12 of the King of Trees' tendrils simultaneously. The 6 Tier 3 summoned creatures and 5 MTs groups ran forward, each tanking one of the boss's main tendrils, further reducing the pressure on Solitary 9. However, the King of Trees was enraged, its attack speed increasing. Hundreds of smaller tendrils extended from its trunk, attacking everything in range. Each of the minor tendrils carried 35% of the mythic monster's strength, more than enough to suppress a great lord of the same level. The summoned creatures and the MT groups were in danger. When the MTs blocked the minor tendrils, they received nearly minus 8,000 damage. On average, each MT had to face 3 or 4 minor tendrils. Even with their life-saving skills active, the MT groups were starting to falter, and the healers struggled to keep up with the plummeting HP. Phoenix Rain's team finally understood how terrifying the King of Trees was. As expected of a mythic monster, relying on the flame potions isn't enough. Feng sighed helplessly. He then used 5,000 magic crystals to activate the Ring of Gospel's World Projection. When World Projection activated, the King of Trees' attributes decreased once more. The debuff was just enough to help the MT groups hold on. Everyone attack! When Feng issued the command, he activated Phantom Kill and dashed for the King of Trees. Due to the flame potions, the King of Trees' defense had weakened significantly. When spells and arrows bombarded the boss's trunk, damages ranging from minus 2,000 to minus 3,000 appeared above the mythic monster's head. The fire-type skills and spells did the most damage, each dealing over minus 5,000 damage on average. Zhao Yueru's attacks stood out from the rest. Wielding Frostflame's Wrath, she bombarded the King of Trees with one fire-type spell after another, each dealing nearly minus 30,000 damage. Just how high is her magic damage? Blue Phoenix, who stood a short distance away from Zhao Yueru, was rendered speechless. She was an elementalist and was already level 48, Yet despite wielding an epic staff, robe and a pair of gloves, her Tier 1 fire-type spells only dealt around minus 12,000 damage. She couldn't even manage half of Zhao Yueru's damage. As everyone continued their bombardment, watching the King of Trees' HP steadily decrease. 90%, 70%, 50%. However, as the mythic monster's HP fell, more tendrils gradually joined the fight. These minor tendrils no longer focused on the summoned creatures and the MTs, occasionally sprouting from the ground to attack the ranged DPS and distant healers. Although the minor tendrils only carried 35% of the King of Trees' strength, they packed enough power to instantly kill the cloth armor classes, steadily reducing the team's numbers. By the time the King of Trees' HP fell to 20%, the 1,000-man army had around 700 players remaining. Despicable intruders! You will only help me grow, the King of Trees bellowed. Suddenly, 6 more main tendrils joined the fight. Now, each of the main tendrils dealt nearly minus 20,000 damage to the MTs with active berserk skills. Before anyone could react, the 6 new tendrils killed off 6 MTs. As the MT group fell, the boss's aggro management descended into chaos. Attack with everything. Use every skill and spell you have. Feng shouted. The sudden loss of an MT group made it impossible for the team to defend against 18 main tendrils. Their only hope was to throw everything they had at the boss and hope they could outlast it. Solitary 9, Dark Madness, and Lifeless Thorn no longer dared to hold back. Immediately, they activated their berserk skills. At the same time, Solitary 9 activated Titan's Heart, creating a protective shield around him that could absorb damage equal to 10 times his maximum HP. The 3 of them quickly moved into position and activated Triple Frost Moon. Suddenly, 3 dazzling arcs of light struck the King of Trees, pulling a pained scream from the mythic monster. At the same time, the King of Trees lost over 2 million HP, its HP bar decreasing by a sizable chunk. Likewise, Feng activated Heavenly Dragon's power before using one skill after another. Across the battlefield, Phoenix Rain activated one Tier 3 magic scroll after another as well. As the King of Trees' HP decreased, it launched frenzied attacks, swiftly claiming players' lives. Although Feng wanted to summon his personal guards, players were prohibited from doing so in historical sites. He could only summon a Tier 3 demon to assist. Eventually, the King of Trees' HP fell to 2%, but only a little over 100 players were still alive. Only a dozen or so MTs still stood against the boss, and over 70% of the team's healers had died. At this rate, the team would fall before they could kill the King of Trees. Everyone retreat! Feng shouted when he realized the hopelessness of the situation. Grinding his teeth, he took the Tier 4, large-scale destruction magic scroll from his bag and unfurled it. Die! As the magic scroll unfurled, the space around the sunset shrine froze. The surrounding mana surged towards the scroll in Feng's hand before a golden magic array formed beneath the boss. Boom! Suddenly, a golden pillar of light rose from the ground, enveloping the mythic ranked guardian boss and piercing through the magic barrier around the sunset forest. The King of Trees' tendrils, both main and minor, disintegrated. Its remaining 2% HP fell to 0 instantly. By the time the golden light pillar dissipated, nothing had remained of the King of Trees. The surviving players only saw a scorched, empty plot of land. Chapter 1483. Obtaining the first clear of the Sunset Forest. Chapter 1483. Obtaining the first clear of the Sunset Forest. The boss is dead. What tier was that spell? How is it so powerful? As the Tier 4 spell, Titan's Wrath, dissipated, the surviving team members regained their senses. Even then, they couldn't bring themselves to believe that the King of Trees was dead. By the time the team had taken the King of Trees down to 2% of its HP, it had deployed well over 1,000 minor tendrils on the battlefield. With the remaining 100-plus members on the team, it would have been impossible to wipe out the boss's remaining HP before the mythic monster annihilated the rest of the team. And yet, just as the team was about to wipe, someone bombarded the King of Trees into oblivion. Why wouldn't they be shocked? Was that some sort of trump card Zero Wing had kept hidden? Phoenix Rain stared at the empty plot before her in shock. She had never expected Zero Wing to have a Tier 4, large-scale destruction magic scroll. At this stage of the game, Tier 3 magic scrolls were extremely precious. With just one of these scrolls, an ordinary player could make a fortune overnight with enough funds to purchase a powerful set of equipment. Among the various magic scrolls available, large-scale destruction spells and summoning spells were the most valuable and highly sought after by the various large guilds. Both types of magic scrolls were powerful enough to turn the tide in battle. But Feng had actually used a Tier 4, large-scale destruction magic scroll. Not even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had gotten their hands on such a scroll. The King of Trees' death contributed a tremendous amount of EXP to the surviving players. Phoenix Rain had even risen from level 48 to level 49. They had obtained more EXP than anyone had expected. Meanwhile, after the King of Trees' death, the barrier enveloping the Sunset Shrine gradually disappeared. System, congratulations. You are the first team to raid the Sunset Forest successfully. Rewards in the Sunset Shrine doubled. You will be teleported out of the Sunset Forest after 1 hour automatically. Healers resurrect the dead. Everyone else, rest up. Feng commanded before entering the Sunset Shrine with Phoenix Rain to inspect the treasures inside. The other players couldn't help their envy, curious about what treasures the shrine held, but they knew that they'd have to wait. Historical sites typically offered far more treasure than dungeons, some of which could be used as guilds' trump cards. Naturally, these guilds would have more of an advantage if fewer people knew about these items. As for Feng, not only was he Phoenix Rain's ally, but he had also signed a contract with the Phoenix Pavilion Master. He had also contributed the most during the raid. Thus, he qualified to enter the shrine alongside the guild leader. Zero Wing and the Asura adventurer team, Quiet Melody could not help but watch Feng's departing back before glancing at Asura's resting members, curiosity and intrigue dominating her thoughts. It seems that I really will need to report to the guild leader. Despite all of the effort the Sacred Temple had spent raiding various historical sites, the guild had failed to raid a single Grade 2 ruin, yet Phoenix Rain's temporary team had secured the first clear of a Grade 1 historical site. If other guilds discovered this, it would cause a commotion. On the journey here, Quiet Melody had carefully observed everything that had happened. Based on what she had seen, she was absolutely certain that without Zero Wing and Asura's help, Phoenix Rain's team would have failed. In fact, they would have been lucky to reach the Sunset Forest's core within the allotted time, much less kill the mythic-ranked King of Trees. She had never imagined that a recently established guild like Zero Wing could become so powerful in such a short amount of time. While historical sites were very rare in God's domain, super guilds like the Sacred Temple had discovered quite a few already. The only thing preventing them from harvesting these ruins' treasure was their lack of strength. Although she did not know what the conditions of Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing's agreement, the Sacred Temple was capable of any price she could afford. Elsewhere, with the magic barrier gone, Feng and Phoenix Rain easily entered the Sunset Shrine. The interior was luxurious. It looked more like a palace than a shrine. Meanwhile, the two found a large pile of items in the center of this palace. This is the Sunset Forest's first clear reward. Even Phoenix Rain, who had seen plenty of treasure before and had her own significant wealth, was surprised to see the mound before her. Among the small mountain of items, she easily counted more treasure chests than what they had looted from the 3 dryad nests they raided earlier. She even saw a few epic treasure chests among them. Aside from treasure chests, there were all sorts of master-ranked potions, high-tiered magic scrolls, special gemstones, and many other valuable items. As she gazed at the items, Phoenix Rain felt as if she were dreaming. At least I didn't waste that Tier 4 magic scroll. Feng spotted 3 epic treasure chests in addition to elemental treasure boxes and 7 Luminaries treasure boxes, which contained elemental sources and 7 Luminaries crystals, respectively. He had thought that the flame potions would be enough to raid the Sunset Forest, but in the end, he had been forced to use a Tier 4 magic scroll as well. But after seeing the Sunset Shrine's treasure, he was satisfied with trading a Tier 4 magic scroll for the first pick of 5 of the shrine's items. Neither the elemental treasure boxes nor the 7 Luminaries treasure boxes were any less valuable than the epic treasure chests. An elemental treasure box would drop 1 to 3 elemental source stones when opened, while a 7 Luminaries treasure box would drop 3 to 6 units of 7 Luminaries crystals. Both treasure boxes had been highly sought after by the various guilds in his previous life. Moreover, Feng spotted various materials, designs, skill books, and other precious items that could easily drive the various large guilds mad with envy. It took Feng and Phoenix Rain over half an hour to organize the loot. According to our agreement, I'll choose 5 items first, Feng said as he glanced at Phoenix Rain. All right, take your pick. Phoenix Rain nodded. She was extremely satisfied with the Sunset Shrine's treasure. Even if Feng claimed all 3 epic treasure chests, she wouldn't be disappointed in the least. After all, among the treasures here, over 10 were just as valuable. Seeing Phoenix Rain nod, Feng began to select his prizes. However, the man hadn't pocketed the 3 epic treasure chests as Phoenix Rain had expected. On the contrary, Feng didn't even glance at the treasure chests. Instead, the first items he claimed were the 2 elemental treasure boxes. While current players might realize how valuable elemental sources were, he did. In fact, elemental sources could be strategic tools in mythic monster raids. Hence, he had to prioritize these items. After selecting the elemental treasure boxes, Feng chose the Sunset Potion recipe, an advanced alchemy recipe unique to the Sunset Forest. The recipe usually had a very low chance at appearing in the Sunset Shrine. When consumed, the potion would have the penalty of a single death. It was a super potion with a 24-hour cooldown. Avoiding death was incredibly difficult in God's domain. Each time a player died in the field, they'd lose an entire level. Hence, the Sunset Potion had been highly regarded in the past. Only very few guilds had been able to brew the potion, contributing to its rarity on the market. The potion had only cost 10 or so silver to produce, yet it had sold for around 1 gold. Now that the Sunset Potion recipe had dropped, he had no reason not to claim it. Feng also selected the basic mana bomb design, an advanced engineering design. Although the necessary materials to craft the item were rare and expensive, each basic mana bomb was as powerful as a peak tier 2 attack. When used in conjunction with defensive turrets, the mana bombs could rival a tier 3 attack. The design was far more valuable than an epic weapon. For Feng's 5th choice, he selected the only epic item throughout the hall. The 7 Luminaries Bible. Chapter 1484, 7 Luminaries Bible. Chapter 1484, 7 Luminaries Bible. These are the 5 items that you want. Phoenix Rain was a little confused as she saw Feng's choices. Setting aside the 7 Luminaries Bible, although the recipe and design for the Sunset Potion and basic mana bomb were valuable, both were very difficult to produce. There was no doubt that the item's production would be slow and limited. The rare materials for the basic mana bomb were particularly expensive. A single crafting attempt would cost around 2 gold, while the final product could cost 6 gold or more. Most importantly, unlike tier 2 magic scrolls, the mana bombs had a 70% reduced effect against players. This impacted how useful the mana bombs could be. Generally, players would only want such an expensive tool to deal with enemy players. Unless necessary, most players avoided using such costly items against monsters. Even if Zero Wing crafted the basic mana bombs, the guild would only make a small profit from them. It would take ages before Zero Wing could earn enough money to make up for the loss of an epic treasure chest. The various large guilds' experts were already reaching level 50 and obtaining their tier 2 classes. Because of that, most guilds were focused on converting their resources into items that would increase their experts' combat power, helping them overcome their promotion quests. Yet Feng did the exact opposite by investing his resources in items that wouldn't yield short-term profit. He had even chosen 2 elemental treasure boxes, which only confused her further. Feng simply chuckled at Phoenix Rain's question. Others might have a hard time using these items to increase a player's strength, but he wouldn't have any issues. This was especially true for the basic mana bomb. Although the production cost was high and it wasn't particularly useful against players, its effects would be miraculous against certain monsters. Moreover, he had chosen the 7 Luminaries Bible, the most valuable item the Sunset Shrine had to offer. He was more than satisfied with his share. 7 Luminaries Bible, epic rank item. Contains the records of magic arrays the gods had left behind. Sacrifice a sufficient amount of mana to activate the recorded magic arrays. The 7 Luminaries Bible would, at most, amount to some epic toll or magic array with indefinite uses to other large guilds. Moreover, even the strongest magic array within the Bible was intermediate rank. It could barely suppress a Grand Lord, yet it required a tremendous amount of mana to activate. Activating one of the 7 Luminaries Bible's intermediate magic arrays cost 2,000 magic crystals. The basic magic arrays cost 500 magic crystals to activate. Honestly, one could easily purchase a stronger array with so many magic crystals. The only benefit of the 7 Luminaries Bible was its variety. Players wouldn't need to search high and low for a specific kind of magic array. There was nothing else special about the item. What everyone didn't know was that the 7 Luminaries Bible didn't consist of a single volume. Rather, there were a total of 7 books. Only after gathering all 7 volumes could one display the 7 Luminaries Bible's true power. The various superpowers had clashed often to obtain more of the Bible's volumes in the past. They had discovered that one could use advanced magic arrays once they had collected 2 volumes. While intermediate magic arrays were rare, players could find them if they put in a little effort. However, the same could not be said for advanced magic arrays and above. In addition, the materials needed to craft advanced magic array scrolls were exceedingly expensive. Meanwhile, these arrays could even suppress mythic monsters, which would, in turn, increase players' chance of obtaining precious items. One could just imagine how valuable an advanced magic array could be if they could use it indefinitely for the cost of magic crystals. God's Domain's current superpowers hadn't discovered this secret yet. Otherwise, Phoenix Rain would have mourned the item's loss. Once Feng had chosen his 5 items, Phoenix Rain organized her harvest. They had obtained far more than she had expected. After opening the 3 epic treasure chests, she had gained 3 epic items and 1 epic ranked, growth-type shield. She was ecstatic over the outcome. With an epic shield, the raids on the various team dungeons would be much easier for her team. She had also gained a large number of level 50 dark gold and fine gold weapons and equipment. Since level 50 was a major turning point in the game, level 50 equipment attributes were 2 ranks higher than that of level 45 equipment. Level 50 secret silver equipment could rival level 45 dark gold equipment. She now had enough level 50 secret silver, fine gold, and dark gold equipment to fully arm a 100-man team. As long as she gave these pieces to players who had items that reduced level requirements, they could improve their equipment right away. The shrine had also contained a large number of rare gemstones, all of which could visibly improve players' combat power. Meanwhile, the contest on Thunder Island prohibited the use of magical tools. This included items like the Bible of Darkness. Players had to rely on their own strength during the contest. This was also why 9 Dragons Emperor had spent so much money to gain Bloody Paradise's help in the Sunset Forest. When Phoenix Rain tried to hand 20% of the harvest to Feng refused the items. Instead, he requested Ancient Origin wood as his share of the bounty, which was the equivalent of every log they had found during the raid. With the Ancient Origin wood, Zero Wing could begin producing advanced speedboats. Since Phoenix Rain needed the weapons and equipment, she saw no reason to refuse him. Once they had finished distributing the loot, Feng and Phoenix Rain called everyone into the shrine, leaving the Sunset Forest through the teleportation array inside. They then split their party to prepare for the contest on Thunder Island. However, Feng planned to make his way to Ocean Viewing Town with his cargo of Ancient Origin wood, intending to begin the advanced speedboats production. By the time Feng and the others had returned to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's courtyard, news of their success in the Sunset Forest spread to the various superpowers. Although the system wouldn't announce a historical site's first clear to the local region, it was difficult to keep a lid on the matter with so many participants. Besides, Phoenix Rain had borrowed experts from a few other guilds for the raid. What? You're saying that Phoenix Rain obtained the first clear of a Grade 1 historical site? Since when had the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion grown so powerful? That's a Grade 1 historical site we're talking about. Zero Wing and the Asura Adventurer Team. Where is this Asura Adventurer Team from? Why haven't I heard of it? Go. Send someone to investigate this Asura Adventurer Team. When the various superpowers' upper echelons read their subordinates' reports, they turned their attention to Zero Wing and the Asura Adventurer Team, particularly Asura. Zero Wing's prowess was no longer news to these superpowers. If they were familiar with the Dark Arena, they had heard of Zero Wing's experts. There was also the old news of Zero Wing's 1,000-man army defeating the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Shadow Dragon Legion, proving that Zero Wing had an incredibly powerful team. However, the Asura Adventure Team was a different story. With the Adventure Team being so powerful yet unknown, it had become a target for recruitment. Meanwhile, Nine Dragons Emperor's team cleared out a dryad nest in the Sunset Forest's core. Of the original 1,000 team members, less than 700 players remained standing. The survivors fought desperately to hold back a Grand Lord-ranked dryad. "Quick! Take these dryads down. We don't have much time left," Nine Dragons Emperor anxiously shouted. He had used many of his trump cards just to get his team to the central area. Even then, he had spent more than 6 hours doing so. Once there, they had spent quite some time exploring the area before they had found a dryad nest, but they hadn't expected the dryads to be so difficult to deal with. In addition, the nest they had found had been guarded by multiple Grand Lords. Even after activating all of their Tier 3 summoning scrolls, they were at a disadvantage. "Pavilion Master, a report just came in from Sun Dragon," Blood Dragon announced. "What is it now?" "Out with it." Nine Dragons Emperor frowned. They had very little time remaining. If they didn't eliminate these dryads in time, they wouldn't return with a single treasure. "Sun Dragon has informed us that Phoenix Rain has already obtained the Sunset Forest's first clear," Blood Dragon replied, struggling to believe the report. Chapter 1485, Taking Shape. Chapter 1485, Taking Shape. Blood Dragon's response stunned Nine Dragons Emperor on the spot. "Impossible!" Nine Dragons Emperor shouted. "I know what Phoenix Rain's team is capable of. She'd be lucky to reach the forest's core. How could she possibly obtain the Sunset Forest's first clear?" They were from the same guild, so he knew practically everything about Phoenix Rain's capabilities. Even if she had some unknown trump card, she could never defeat the historical site's final boss. He was only confident in doing so because he had an advanced magic array and the aid of Bloody Paradise. As far as he knew, Phoenix Rain didn't have an advanced magic array. Sun doubted the information as well, so she used multiple sources to verify the claim. She even obtained a video recording of the raid, so there is no mistaking the information, Blood Dragon explained. One of the reasons for her success was a tool called the Flame Potion, which significantly reduced the boss's attributes. In addition, the Asura Adventure Team has a super powerful MT that tanked the weakened boss by himself. In the end, Zero Wing used a Tier 4 magic scroll to finish it off. Lucky bastards. They actually found a way to weaken the boss. Nine Dragons Emperor fumed when he saw the video Blood Dragon had sent him. A trace of envy flashed in his eyes. However, he sneered and growled, "Just you wait. You may have secured the Sunset Forest's first clear, but I'll teach you that your struggles are futile soon. Blood, notify Sun, and tell her that she proceed with the plan. Contact Beast Emperor as well, and tell that old bastard that I'm running out of patience. I don't want to see Zero Wing prance about any longer." "Understood." Blood Dragon shuddered when he heard the cold determination in Nine Dragons Emperor's voice. Elsewhere, Feng arrived in Ocean Viewing Town via a teleportation array. The town's player population had increased significantly since his first visit. He saw countless players forming teams and parties as they prepared to set sail for the islands to grind and level. He also spotted a few merchant fleet representatives conducting their maritime transportation business. Transport from Ocean Viewing Town to Sandy Bay Town. Special price right now. Only charging 15 silver per person. Less than 1,000 slots of bag space free of charge. 5 silver for every additional 1,000 slots. 3 silver for each non-bag space item. Transport from Ocean Viewing Town to Coral Harbor. Only charging 20 silver per person. Less than 1,000 slots of bag space free of charge. 7 silver for every additional 1,000 slots. 5 silver for each non-bag space item. Many independent merchant and adventuring players crowded around the merchant fleet representatives, trying to haggle down the prices. Players who preferred to use the merchant ships were generally trying to avoid exorbitant teleportation fees. Cross-national teleportation fees were particularly expensive. Even teleporting to a neighboring country cost more than 1 gold. It wasn't unusual to pay 2 or 3 gold when traveling farther. It was cheaper to hire a ship. This was especially true for players transporting non-bag space items. Although the maritime transportation system in Ocean Viewing Town wasn't yet perfect, it had begun to take shape. These people sure are taking action quickly. Glancing at the various merchant players, Feng easily spotted over 5 merchant fleets. It seems that I'll need to produce the new type of cargo ships as soon as possible. Maritime transportation had been very well developed in the past. It had also generated a frightening amount of wealth for players. Hence, the various large guilds had established their own merchant fleets and contested over territory at sea. Initially, Feng had been satisfied with the development of his naval forces, but there were plenty of capable players in God's domain. In the end, many players had quickly discovered this business opportunity. At the moment, these merchant fleets were renting ordinary cargo ships from NPCs. Each ordinary cargo ship could only carry 35 people, and the cargo ship's item space was limited. Each ship could only carry 30 non-bag space items at a time. He had previously spent 30,000 gold to purchase a special medium shipyard. As long as he had sufficient materials and engineers, he could begin constructing the new cargo ships immediately. Not only were the new cargo ships 15% faster than ordinary cargo ships, but they could also carry up to 40 people at a time. Meanwhile, Feng had both engineers and materials available to him. He could start producing the ships as soon as he desired. Once these new cargo ships were built, he'd make a fortune off of them whether he rented them out or used them himself. Following which, Feng contacted Melancholic Smile and had her dispatch a large number of engineers to Ocean Viewing Town. Previously, the Candlelight trading firm had lacked both quantity and quality of engineers, but now they had become a holy land for lifestyle players in Starmoon Kingdom. Since the trading firm constantly recruited lifestyle players, they had a large collection of engineers. Right now, even if the trading firm only dispatched a small fraction of these players, they would be more than enough to operate a large shipyard, not to mention a medium shipyard. Guild leader, do you really intend to use such a precious material to construct the Flying Eagle speedboats and new cargo ships? Burning Abyss was astonished as he gazed at the ancient origin which Feng had placed before him. As a master engineer, he had researched the various materials available in God's domain. This was especially true for the materials useful to engineers. He knew that ancient origin wood was a top-tier material meant for ship construction. Using it to construct bronze speedboats would be a waste, much less constructing an advanced speedboat. The new cargo ship was even less valuable than an advanced speedboat. Just use it for now. I don't have any higher-ranked designs on me at the moment. Feng was just as reluctant to use the wood. After all, ancient origin wood was a precious material that could only be obtained from the Sunset Forest. When used to construct ships, not only would it increase the production success rate, but it also had a chance of strengthening the ship with the power of ancients, enhancing the ship's quality. It was incredibly extravagant to use it to construct a ship that wasn't even bronze rank. However, he couldn't care less at the moment. Ship designs were extremely rare. He had been fortunate enough to obtain the design for the Flying Eagle speedboat and the newly developed cargo ship. Following which, Feng handed Burning Abyss the basic mana bomb design and instructed him to produce the bombs. He was happy enough to let the advanced engineers take charge of producing the speedboats and the cargo ships. There wasn't a need to involve a master engineer like Burning Abyss in the project. The basic mana bomb was a different story. Despite only being basic rank, the design and advanced engineering design. If he left it to the advanced engineers, their success rate would at most reach 30%. If Burning Abyss crafted the bombs, however, his success rate would be at least 50%. Letting Burning Abyss produce the bombs would save on cost and materials. After all, the required materials were both rare and expensive. What an intricate design. I never knew magic arrays could be used in such a way. After glancing at the basic mana bomb design, Burning Abyss was captivated. I'll leave the shipyard's management to you. As for this design, you'll learn it. If you have time, try to produce as many of the bombs as you can. I have an important use for them, Feng said, chuckling at the engineer's starstruck expression. Guild leader, Burning Abyss was stunned when he heard Feng's instructions. However, he was instantly overjoyed and excited. Even after becoming a master engineer, he had only been promoted to chief engineer in the Candlelight trading firm. In the end, he was only one of Zero Wing's core members, but it was a different story if he were allowed to manage the shipyard. It was the equivalent of becoming one of the guild's upper management. Countless lifestyle players dreamed of such status. Following which, Feng handed a portion of the shipyard's authority to Burning Abyss. He then paid Rodney a visit, calling in on the agreement with the master engineer to assist in the shipyard. Not only would Rodney's presence increase production success rate when crafting ships, but production speed would increase as well. As Feng finished with the shipyard's matters and prepared to lead Gentle Snow and the others to Thunder Island, Aqua Rose gleefully walked up to him, whispering, "Guild leader, Summer just contacted me. She says that she's successfully class-changed into a Dragon Slayer. Moreover, Kola has also completed his class change. Should I have them head over?" Chapter 1486, Assembly of Experts. Chapter 1486, Assembly of Experts. They're done already? Feng was a little confused. As far as he could remember, the Dragon Slayer class change quest wasn't an easy one. All right, tell them to hurry and join us. Honestly, he had been somewhat worried about having sufficient strength for the contest on Thunder Island, and had even considered recruiting Owl's help. However, it seemed that wouldn't be necessary. Kola's success in becoming a Tier 2 Dragon Slayer Knight alone would boost the team's overall strength, not to mention Alluring Summer, who is now a Tier 2 Dragon Slayer Mage. Both basic attributes and skills would undergo a qualitative transformation when players reached Tier 2. Kola also had the epic-ranked Dragon Scale Shield. Had he been present during the King of Trees raid, the raid definitely would have been a lot easier. He wouldn't have needed to waste an incomparably precious Tier 4 magic scroll. Hearing Feng's answer, Aqua Rose immediately contacted Alluring Summer and Kola, telling them to gather in Ocean Viewing Town. "Guild leader, if we don't leave soon, I'm afraid we won't make it in time," Gentle Snow said worriedly as she looked at the time. It would take quite some time to travel from Starmoon Kingdom to the Apocalypse Empire. Thunder Island was located in the Sea of Death's inner region, very far away from the Apocalypse Empire. There weren't any teleportation arrays connected to the island, so players had to rely on other means to reach it. In fact, the various major powers participating in the contest for Thunder Island's authority had long since set out. Phoenix Rain and Nine Dragons Emperor had only delayed their departure to obtain the weapons and equipment from the Sunset Forest. As soon as Phoenix Rain had cleared the historical site, she and her subordinates rushed towards the island. Since Feng had wanted to begin producing advanced speedboats as soon as possible, he had made a trip to Ocean Viewing Town with the Ancient Origin Wood. Otherwise, they would have left for Thunder Island with Phoenix Rain's group. As a result, their group was far behind schedule. Furthermore, the Swift Dragon speedboat could only accommodate 30 people, half of their planned 60-man team. The rest of the members would have to sail on advanced speedboats. If they left right this instant, they would barely make it in time for the contest. If they waited for Kola and Alluring Summer, they'd likely be late. "Relax. We have enough time," Feng consoled her, smiling. Following which, Feng led everyone to Ocean Viewing Town's harbor. Half an hour later, Kola and Alluring Summer finally reached the harbor atop two majestic thunder wolves. The moment Kola and Alluring Summer arrived, they attracted a lot of attention from the players at the harbor. They were difficult to miss. Both of these players radiated intense auras from atop their mounts. "Guild leader, we're sorry for the wait," Kola apologized as he stopped before Feng. "It's fine. It's about time to set out," Feng said, nodding. He then invited Kola and Alluring Summer to the team. When Lifeless Thorn and his companions from the Ice Crystal world saw Kola and Alluring Summer, they were astounded. They had already been shocked by the Strength Zero Wings members displayed. They hadn't expected the guild to have even more experts. "Lifeless, how confident are you of defeating those two?" Cleansing Whistle whispered as she looked at Kola and Alluring Summer. Personally, Cleansing Whistle doubted that she was a match for Kola or Alluring Summer. Just by standing so close, she felt an intense wave of danger from them. "The guy? Maybe. The other one? I don't know. I'd have to fight her to find out," Lifeless Thorn said, fighting spirit illuminating his gaze as he watched Alluring Summer. He had struggled to find anyone who could offer a good fight back in Cold Wind City. When Feng had said that God's Domain's continent had plenty of experts, he had assumed the claim was meant to excite him. But looking at it now, it would seem that the swordsman hadn't lied. What? Even you aren't confident of winning? Cleansing Whistle could not help but turn to look at Alluring Summer in shock. Based on her observations during the raid in the Sunset Forest, she knew that Gentle Snow, Aqua Rose, and Zhao Yueru were powerful. Although other experts from Zero Wing had been present, it was obvious that they were significantly weaker than the three women. Hence, Cleansing Whistle had assumed that Lifeless Thorn would rank among the top 5 in Zero Wing. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like that was the case. When she thought about how Zero Wing had at least 5 experts who were even stronger than a monster like Lifeless Thorn, her shock was natural. However, Cleansing Whistle felt pretty lucky about the situation. She had been Cold Wind City's #1 swordsman. With no suitable rivals, she had to rely on herself to improve. Now, however, she met a group of people who were much stronger than her. They also had an expert swordsman like Feng. If she fought alongside these powerful people and leached off of their experiences, she could grow stronger far more quickly. Cleansing Whistle wasn't the only one with such thoughts. Solitary 9 and Dark Madness were just as pleased. As Asura's members subtly watched Kola and Alluring Summer, Feng arrived beside the harbor and pulled a crystal bottle from his bag. He then began to chant an incantation. Runes lit up and danced around the crystal bottle. A short moment later, dark fog surged forth, expanding to cover a large area of the water before Feng. The scene attracted a lot of attention. What's going on? Is that guy summoning a mysterious iron speedboat? That shouldn't be possible. No speedboat is that big. It must be a cargo ship. I've seen someone release a cargo ship before, and it definitely wasn't that large. While everyone discussed the disturbance, the cloud of dark fog expanded up and out. Soon, the fog dissipated, revealing Feng's ship. This ship was a silver sailboat, double the size of ordinary cargo ships. While it was docked, it dwarfed the nearby ordinary and advanced speedboats. What? That's the sailboat. How is this possible? Everyone was stupefied when they saw the one-horned sailboat. As naval players, they had spent most of their gaming career in God's Domain at sea. Although they weren't well-known experts, they understood ships just as well, if not better, than the various large guilds. A sailboat could send tremors throughout the Apocalypse Empire. It could definitely overturn the current hierarchy of the Empire's naval powers. Even a bronze speedboat was no more than a fly to be swatted in the face of a sailboat. Guild leader, since when do you have a sailboat? Could it be? Have you already repaired the sailboat we got from the Fallen Ark? Aqua Rose's eyes glowed as she stared at the monstrosity of a ship before her. Although Zero Wing had the Swift Dragon speedboat, at the end of the day, a speedboat was just a speedboat. Without a large number of support ships, it would be very difficult to exert the Swift Dragon speedboat's maximum potential. At most, Zero Wing would be a minor threat to the Apocalypse Empire's various naval powers. However, it was a different story if Zero Wing had a sailboat. A sailboat would allow Zero Wing to contest for the Empire's port cities. If they had their own port city, they wouldn't have to operate in the dark. They could simply steamroll over any opposing forces. Even Gentle Snow was speechless. Despite being one of the guild's vice-guild leaders, she still didn't have a clear idea of how many secrets Zero Wing had. It wasn't unlike the Asura adventure team's sudden appearance. I haven't repaired the Storm sailboat yet. I obtained the one-horned sailboat from a sea monster I helped kill, Feng said, shaking his head. All right, we don't have much time. Get on the boat. Chapter 1487, Shocking All Sides. Due to the dark clouds that shrouded the Sea of Death all year round, it was always dusky. However, contrary to the islands in the Sea of Death, lightning constantly struck around Thunder Island, illuminating the area. As Thunder Island could be found in the Sea of Death's inner region, permanent storms assailed the water. In addition, a large number of powerful sea monsters lived in the area, preventing seafaring adventurers from casually approaching the island. At this moment, however, ships of various kinds had dropped anchor around Thunder Island, forming a tight circle around the landmass. The naval adventurer teams that had come to spectate the upcoming contest were shocked. Pantheon's fleet is amazing. It dispatched 14 bronze speedboats and 1 mysterious iron speedboat. That's nothing. Look at the sacred temple. Now that's what I call amazing. The sacred temple has sent over 100 speedboats. Among them, 23 are bronze speedboats and over 50 are advanced speedboats. There are even 2 mysterious iron speedboats in the fleet. The sacred temple's navy is definitely the strongest of them all. I'm not so sure about that. Miracle has been rapidly developing its navy. Although the guild doesn't have any mysterious iron speedboats, it has 21 bronze speedboats and the Sea Dragon Mark, a secret silver speedboat. You should see how fast that secret silver speedboat is. I wonder who will win the contest. The spectating players brimmed with anticipation as they discussed the participating superpowers' navies. Originally, only a few superpowers had focused on the contest for Thunder Island, but as time passed, more guilds began to realize how important marine resources were. This was especially true for the treasured area known as the Sea of Death. In the end, more super guilds and super first-rate guilds had joined the fray. Moreover, Thunder Island was the only safe haven in the Sea of Death. Any player that wanted to develop in the Sea of Death would have to dock at Thunder Island to restock and repair. Otherwise, traveling to and from the Sea of Death would be incredibly time-consuming. Whoever controlled Thunder Island would become the Sea of Death's unofficial master. Naturally, the contest on Thunder Island concerned every player's development in the Sea of Death. They had to pay attention to it. After all, every guild had a different management style. Besides, it was not often that they got to watch God's domain's superpowers have a go at each other's throats. Although they didn't have an entry pass for Thunder Island, they had all purchased an intermediate magic mirror, which cost 8 gold coins. The intermediate magic mirror allowed players to spy on a 100 by 100 yard area within a 10,000 yard radius for 4 hours. Fortunately, the Thunder Island contest only lasted 8 hours. 16 gold might be expensive to an ordinary adventure team, but the naval adventurer teams capable of reaching Thunder Island were extraordinarily strong. Spending 16 gold coins was nothing to them. After all, each of their adventurers yielded several to over a dozen gold. They could easily earn back the spent coins by exploring dangerous areas. Players didn't get to see matches between the superpowers' peak experts every day. Who knew when they would get another opportunity? Furthermore, the various large guilds highly valued Thunder Island. They would definitely go all out in the upcoming contest. While everyone waited for the barrier around the island to open, speedboats continued to arrive. Among these speedboats, some belonged to the various expert teams the superpowers had hired. Amazing! Isn't that the Shadow Knight Order, a top adventurer team in the Beast Empire? They're joining the contest as well. Look, that person looks like Undead, Bloody Paradise's commander. Many of the ships sailing towards Thunder Island belong to well-known experts and adventurer teams in God's domain. However, as everyone watched the famous expert teams, a gigantic, silver sailboat suddenly broke through the waves. As the sailboat pushed forward, the speedboats in its path inadvertently moved aside, opening a path as if their king had arrived. The silver sailboat soon arrived before the magic barrier enveloping Thunder Island. Everyone watched the ship, questions dancing in their minds. Crap, that's a sailboat. It's so fast. Who owns it? That's a sailboat? Speedboats are nothing but pests in comparison. The one-horn sailboat's arrival earned a round of gasps from the watching players. Both the independent players here to watch the contest and the various superpowers members were surprised to see it. March, which power do those people belong to? They actually got their hands on a sailboat. Why haven't I received a report about this? 1,000 Miles, Miracle's second vice guild leader, asked the long-haired beauty beside him as his expression turned grim. I don't know. There's no mention of it in the information we collected on the superpowers, Silent March said, shaking her head. She was similarly shocked to see the one-horn sailboat. Miracle had focused on developing its navy since the game had launched, yet they had only found a few clues about acquiring a sailboat. They were still far from actually obtaining one. It was truly hard to imagine that someone had found one before they had. Send someone to investigate this matter immediately. I want to know everything there is to know about that sailboat. 1,000 Miles barked, greed flashing in his eyes. Also, send someone to keep an eye on those people. Do not let them slip past us. Understood, Silent March began to make the necessary arrangements. Miracle wasn't the only guild to notice the one-horned sailboat. Pantheon, Battle Wolves, King's Return, Nine Heavens Pavilion, Sacred Temple, and Dragon Phoenix Pavilion watched the ship closely. They were all hungry to know which power that sailboat belonged to. Shortly after these guilds' upper echelons ordered their investigations, cloaked figures began to arrive on the deck. Almost all of these players wore six-winged emblems. A few of these players were particularly familiar to the superpowers' upper echelons. How do they have a sailboat? Zero wing. Everyone's jaws dropped when they saw Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose, who hadn't bothered to hide their appearances. All of these superpowers were very familiar with the two women. However, they didn't just recognize these women because of personal fame, but they also knew them as Zero Wing's vice guild leaders. Since both were present on the one-horned sailboat, the ship must belong to Zero Wing. No matter how hard they tried to wrap their minds around the idea, they couldn't bring themselves to believe that Zero Wing, a rising guild in Starmoon Kingdom, had acquired a sailboat, something they had failed to do thus far. Furthermore, Starmoon Kingdom wasn't anywhere near the sea. Big Sis Rain, look. It looks like that sailboat belongs to Zero Wing. Blue Phoenixes stared in shock when she saw Feng on the one-horned sailboat's deck. Rather than responding, Phoenix Rain was dazed. Suddenly, she realized why, after emerging from the sunset forest, Feng had taken his sweet time to deal with some other matter rather than rushing to Thunder Island. It turned out that he had hidden yet another trump card. The one-horned sailboat gradually came to a halt beside Phoenix Rain's fleet. The various superpowers who had been watching the sailboat shifted their gaze to the Phoenix Pavilion Master. Phoenix Rain stared back, at a loss for words. Chapter 1488. Struggle for Thunder Island. Chapter 1488. Struggle for Thunder Island. When everyone saw the one-horned sailboat park beside the fleet Phoenix Rain commanded, they couldn't help their wariness of the woman. It was true that the struggle for Thunder Island relied on players' strengths, with external tools being prohibited. However, one had to obtain Thunder Passes to participate, and to do so, they needed to kill the Sea of Death's bosses. With a sailboat, Phoenix Rain would have an easier time defeating those bosses. In turn, she could collect more passes. The more Thunder Passes one possessed, the more players they bring to the contest. Although each guild was allowed a fixed number of Thunder Passes, the same couldn't be said for future contests. Now that Phoenix Rain had a sailboat, she would pose a huge threat during the next contest. Zero Wing sure has a lot of secrets. Quiet Melody, who stood on the deck of one of the Sacred Temple's speedboats, turned to look at Phoenix Rain, envy gripping her heart. The various superpowers had struggled to recruit naval powers, trying to bolster their forces so they could obtain more Thunder Passes. Yet, despite Phoenix Rain only recently focusing on her navy, she had recruited a powerful ally like Zero Wing, which had its own sailboat. Phoenix Rain had cooperated with Zero Wing before it had risen to greatness. Needless to say, Zero Wing would help her grind for Thunder Passes if she asked. However, unlike Quiet Melody, who had a strong friendship with Phoenix Rain, the other superpowers' upper echelons had far more nefarious thoughts. The various superpowers were preparing to aim their spearheads for the threat known as Phoenix Rain. Damn it! How did Zero Wing get that sailboat? Nine Dragons Emperor glared at the one-horned sailboat with intense jealousy. Although it was a single sailboat, its combat power was far beyond any speedboat. While they had explored God's domain's oceans, the various superpowers had learned one thing. Ships were more important than players in naval combat. If a ship weren't of a certain quality, it wouldn't be able to contend with the boss sea monsters. Needless to say, these powerful bosses would drop weapons, equipment, and various tools that could help improve one's naval strength. With these tools, a team could explore farther and more dangerous regions, obtaining even better equipment and tools, creating an endless, positive cycle. As for Nine Dragons Emperor, he had spent a lot of money and resources to recruit rising naval powers. He had only amassed a sizable fleet after many challenges. This fleet was why he was confident in surpassing Phoenix Rain. However, the appearance of Zero Wing's one-horned sailboat had instantly made a joke of his effort. Pavilion Master, if Phoenix Rain has the help of a sailboat, she'll be a huge challenge in future struggles over Thunder Island, Blood Dragon worriedly commented. There was no doubting that neither Phoenix Rain nor Nine Dragons Emperor would dominate Thunder Island this time. At most, each side would occupy a small corner of the island, slowing growing their navies until they could dominate the island as a whole. Now that Phoenix Rain had a sailboat on her side, there was no doubt that she had a massive advantage of Nine Dragons Emperor in future contests. Phoenix Rain will be a problem during future struggles for Thunder Island. However, she has to last until the next contest. First, Nine Dragons Emperor hissed once he calmed down. Sneering, he continued, "Contact the other guilds. Tell them that I'd like to discuss cooperation. I'm sure they'll be willing to work with us to annihilate Phoenix Rain." The various superpowers had been wary of each other thus far. They'd be fortunate not to make more enemies, let alone participate. However, now that they all faced a future threat like Phoenix Rain, they would be willing to cooperate. Understood. I'll contact them right away. Realization dawned upon Blood Dragon. He then turned towards Phoenix Rain's group, smirking. "How are things coming along on Sun's side?" Nine Dragons Emperor asked. "Pavilion Master, rest assured. Everything has been dealt with. All you need to do is sit back and watch the show," Blood Dragon reported with a smile. "Excellent. I want to see Phoenix Rain's expression when she finds out." Nine Dragons Emperor nodded in satisfaction. Meanwhile, Phoenix Rain was shocked to learn that Zero Wing had its own sailboat. Team leader Feng, Zero Wing's entrance was certainly grand, Phoenix Rain said, smiling bitterly as she sensed malice from all directions. "Once we enter Thunder Island, I'm afraid many parties will target our team." "Phoenix Pavilion Master, don't you see the opportunity?" Feng retorted, chuckling. While Zero Wing's frightening potential was a threat to their competitors, it also made the guild the best choice for an alliance. It was impossible for a single superpower to monopolize Thunder Island. Everyone understood this, and it was precisely why the various superpowers sought allies. After all, the profits one could gain with a single supporter versus two or more differed greatly. The various superpowers might have looked down on Phoenix Rain, thinking themselves above cooperating with her previously, but now that her side had such potential, she could be a formidable ally. When the Phoenix Pavilion's members heard Feng's reasoning, realization dawned. They were in awe of the swordsman's foresight. In reality, Phoenix Rain had considered seeking an alliance with a few other superpowers and had sent Blue Phoenix to negotiate. Unfortunately, although the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was a super first-rate guild, the guild's strength was split three ways. Among them, the Great Pavilion Master was the strongest within the pavilion. As a result, she couldn't convince the other superpowers to cooperate with her in the contest. As expected, every one of them had refused her offer. However, with the addition of Zero Wing's sailboat, the other superpowers might reconsider. Big Sis Rain, both the Battle Wolves and Sacred Temple have stated that they are willing to cooperate. However, we will only get 20% of the profits while their guilds will share the remaining 80%, Blue Phoenix reported angrily. "Those despicable old foxes." Phoenix Rain frowned. "They know that I'm competing with Nine Dragons Emperor, so they're using the opportunity to hike up their prices. I have a suggestion. Would you be interested in hearing it, Phoenix Pavilion Master?" Feng suddenly asked. "A suggestion?" Phoenix Rain gave the man a curious look. "May I know what sort of plan team leader Feng has in mind? I'll represent Zero Wing in this alliance. Negotiate with the Battle Wolves and the Sacred Temple for 40% of Thunder Island's profits," Feng said. 40%? Blue Phoenix was astonished. She thought that Feng had completely lost his mind. It was obvious that the Battle Wolves and Sacred Temple had discussed the situation beforehand and only intended to offer Phoenix Rain 20%. Yet Feng wanted to ask for twice that. If the two guilds heard this, they'd laugh themselves to death. "Team leader Feng, are you serious?" Phoenix Rain asked earnestly. Chapter 1489, Terrifying Potential. Chapter 1489, Terrifying Potential. Guild Leader. Feng's proposal surprised both Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose. Both women thought the idea was ludicrous. The 20% the Battle Wolves and Sacred Temple had proposed included Zero Wing's cut, yet he wanted to double the price. Neither guild would ever agree. After all, both were bona fide super guilds. "Phoenix Pavilion Master, do you really think that our two guilds aren't worth 40% of Thunder Island's profits?" Feng asked, smiling. This, for a time, Phoenix Rain did not know how to answer Feng's question. Her forces were, in no way, inferior to battle wolves and sacred temples. She just didn't have as many people. However, it was a different story if she included Zero Wing's sailboat. Zero Wing's sailboat could make up for the naval combat power the Phoenix Pavilion lacked. If both guilds worked together in the future, they'd be able to secure far more thunder passes than the battle wolves and sacred temple. Hence, asking for 40% of the profits was in no way excessive. Only, the battle wolves and sacred temple knew that other guilds would target her if she didn't cooperate with them. All sides might even turn against her as soon as they entered Thunder Island. If you don't feel that we're worth that much, then you should see this. Feng understood Phoenix Rain's concerns. He sent her a trade request, placing one of the crystal bottles from his bag into the trade window. This is a small sailboat. How? Phoenix Rain shot Feng an astounded look when she saw the item. In God's domain, items currently in use couldn't be placed in a trade window. The fact that she was staring at a small sailboat proved that Zero Wing had more than one. She found it truly hard to believe that, while the various superpowers frantically searched for sailboats, Zero Wing had acquired at least two without anyone noticing. She even wondered if her eyes were playing a trick on her, but when she clicked on the glass bottle, the attribute panel that appeared proved its existence. Phoenix Pavilion Master, what do you think of my proposal now? Feng asked, smiling. The small sailboat he had just revealed was none other than the ordinary small sailboat he had liberated from the Freedom Alliance's identical summer. Although it was only an ordinary small sailboat, its combat power far surpassed any speedboat. He also had the mysterious iron-ranked Storm sailboat, which he had yet to repair. Unfortunately, the Storm sailboat wasn't usable combat power right now. Hence, he had only decided to reveal the ordinary small sailboat. I understand. I'll notify the Battle Wolves and Sacred Temple about your proposal, Phoenix Rain said after taking a deep breath. When she looked at Feng, she felt as if the man were foreign to her. Big Sis Rain? Blue Phoenix gave her friend a confused look. She could not figure out what Feng had shown Phoenix Rain to change her mind about such a huge risk so quickly. Don't try to persuade me. Just do as he says, Phoenix Rain commanded. With no other choice, Blue Phoenix transmitted the new offer to the Battle Wolves and Sacred Temple's upper echelons. She no longer dared to think of what their reply would be. Interesting. Phoenix Rain is bold enough to make such an offer despite her current predicament? Eternal Dead, the Sacred Temple's guild leader, could not help but laugh when he saw Phoenix Rain's counteroffer. On the other hand, Quiet Melody was dazed for a moment when she read the new message. Only one thought came to her mind. Has Phoenix Rain lost her mind? If Phoenix Rain had the authority to mobilize all of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's forces and Zero Wing's sailboat, she might have a chance of convincing the Battle Wolves and Sacred Pavilion to agree with her conditions. Unfortunately, with her current strength, the super guilds would never agree. Based on Quiet Melody's knowledge, Phoenix Rain had only obtained 270 slots for the contest. That was barely on par with 9 Dragon's Emperor's slots, but the Sacred Temple had 710. Ignoring the standards of the guild's experts, the severe difference in numbers put Phoenix Rain at an overwhelming disadvantage. Melody, tell Phoenix Rain that her condition lacks sincerity, and the Sacred Temple will need time to consider her offer properly, Eternal Dead said, smiling. Understood. Quiet Melody nodded. Elsewhere, the Battle Wolves' upper echelons prepared a similar answer. Big Sis Rain, both guilds gave the same reply. They have said that they need more time to consider, Blue Phoenix helplessly reported. Obviously, the Battle Wolves and the Sacred Temple wanted to watch them make a fool of themselves and take advantage when the other superpowers targeted their forces on Thunder Island. If they went crawling to the two guilds then, they'd be lucky to get 20%, much less 40% of the island's profits. As expected, it seems that we can only take this one step at a time. The outcome didn't surprise Phoenix Rain whatsoever. All she could do was try her best in the contest. As long as she could occupy a spot on the island, nothing could stop her in the future. While the various superpowers had negotiated alliances, the magic barrier around Thunder Island turned from blue to crimson. Furious roars echoed from the island, and despite being so far away, everyone heard them clearly. Has the contest begun? As more of the island's monsters voiced their rage, the spectating adventurer teams took out their intermediate magic mirrors and began to observe the landmass. Move out! In response, the various superpowers stored their ships and retrieved their thunder passes. They used the passes to leave a thunder mark on their members, each pass imparting 10 marks. Any player with a thunder mark could teleport to Thunder Island at any time. Shortly after, the various superpowers members disappeared almost simultaneously as they teleported to Thunder Island to contest for the ancient towers. During the contest, players were prohibited from using any tools. They could only rely on their own power to compete. In addition, all of the island's monsters had frighteningly high magic resistance and defense. Players had to occupy as many ancient towers as they could, reducing these monsters' magic resistance and defense, or raiding the encampments would be very difficult. Meanwhile, teleportation to Thunder Island wasn't completely random. Generally, players who were close to each other would teleport to the same location. As long as they gathered before teleporting to the island, they could take action as a team as soon as they arrived. It seems that we got a good location. After arriving on the island, Feng inspected the system map. Currently, their group was north of Thunder Island's outer region, very close to a monster encampment and 3 ancient towers. As long as they secured these ancient towers, they could clear out the monster encampment. Following which, Phoenix Rain and Feng began to rearrange the team. They were prepared to split into 3 groups, prioritizing the ancient towers. Only after they solidified their hold would they head towards the nearest encampment. However, as Feng and the others prepared to head out, a group of nearly 300 players approached. Leading this group was none other than 9 Dragons Emperor. 9, what is the meaning of this? Phoenix Rain demanded in a chilling tone as she glared at the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion Master. What else could this be? We're here to eliminate a future problem, 9 Dragons Emperor said, sneering. We have nearly the same number of players. You know that a fight between us will only benefit our mutual enemies. Although Phoenix Rain had suspected that 9 Dragons Emperor might attempt to take action, she hadn't expected him to do so this quickly, even neglecting the contest for the ancient towers. Equal numbers, huh? 9 Dragons Emperor responded playfully. I don't think so. As soon as 9 Dragons Emperor finished speaking, she heard an anguished scream from behind her. Turning around, she discovered that the 50 Firmament members on her team had turned traitor, attacking her other team members. In seconds, over 20 players had died. By the time she reacted, Firmament's members had pulled away from her team. Lonely Heaven. Phoenix Rain bellowed, dense killing intent lacing her gaze as she glared daggers at Firmament's smiling guild leader. Phoenix Pavilion Master, if you have to blame someone, blame yourself for making the wrong decision. You actually invested so much into a no-name guild like Zero Wing. Lonely Heaven paid no attention to Phoenix Rain's killing intent. Now, prepare to pay the price for your mistake. Well said. Rain, since you made a wrong decision, you should pay the corresponding price. 9 Dragons Emperor then commanded, everyone attack. Leave none of them alive. Initially, both his team and Phoenix Rain's had about the same number of players, but now that Firmament had mutinied and killed 20 of Phoenix Rain's players, she had less than 200. On the other hand, he now had 350. With nearly double the numbers, he could easily eliminate Phoenix Rain's team. Chapter 1490, Bloodhand Yama. Chapter 1490, Bloodhand Yama. As soon as 9 Dragons Emperor gave the command, his experts marched forward in formation. With Martial Dragon and Blood Dragon on the front line, the melee players charged at Phoenix Rain's team. Meanwhile, the ranged players spread out to encircle her players, providing their melee teammates cover fire. The healers in the back began their incantations immediately. With Firmament's members behind them, Phoenix Rain's team had nowhere to go. Everyone, concentrate your attacks on Firmament's members. We're breaking through. Avoid prolonged fights. Although Phoenix Rain was furious about Lonely Heaven's betrayal, wanting nothing more than to murder the bastard herself, she quickly recovered her calm and decided to save as much of her team's strength as possible. After all, the contest for Thunder Island had just begun. Both sides had plenty of Refinement Realm and above experts. If Refinement Realm experts worked together, their overall combat power would increase tremendously. When fighting foes of the same level, Even at a numerical disadvantage, they'd be impossible to annihilate quickly. Unfortunately, defeating Nine Dragons Emperor's team was impossible. Although she had Feng and Zero Wing's other peak experts, Nine Dragons Emperor had his own. The Shadow Dragon Legion's Shadowtooth and Martial Dragon were the best examples. Both were domain realm experts and more than capable of posing a problem for her team. In addition, Nine Dragons Emperor had other experts under his command and the help of Bloody Paradise. Although the Phoenix Pavilion and Heavenly Dragon Pavilion on part in overall strength, the trump card legions under each banner weren't under the full control of their respective pavilion master. Rather, these trump card legions prioritized the Great Pavilion Master's commands. Meanwhile, Phoenix Rain had only been the Phoenix Pavilion's master for a short time, and as a result, the Phoenix Pavilion's trump card legions still maintained their loyalty to the previous master. Like Shadowtooth's case, she wasn't allowed to order them around and had to resort to persuasion. This was why her power base was significantly weaker than Nine Dragons Emperor's. Now that he had persuaded Shadowtooth to fight for him, and Martial Dragon, whom Nine Dragons Emperor had nurtured, had become a domain realm expert, the gap between them had widened. With fewer players on her team, she had no chance of victory. She could only avoid a clash with Nine Dragons Emperor. Like in other maps, players that died on Thunder Island would lose a level and drop a piece of equipment. This gave her even more of a reason to avoid a fight with Nine Dragons Emperor. If her team were weakened further, she'd have no hope of capturing the ancient towers and monster encampments. You wish to break through? Nine Dragons Emperor sneered as he watched Phoenix Rain lead her team towards Firmaments group. Lonely. It's about time we give our Lady Pavilion Master a taste of despair. Hearing this, the distant Lonely Heaven grinned and nodded. He then turned to one of his cloaked guild members and said, "I've done my part. I'll leave the rest to you. Relax. We've accepted your payment and will complete the mission." At this time, a robust man emerged from Firmament's team. The man removed his black cloak, revealing a mass of muscle. With the black cloak gone, his horrific bloodlust was no longer contained, and even players standing over 30 yards away could sense it radiating off of him. This robust man wasn't the only one to remove his cloak. The 40-plus members Lonely Heaven had brought with him discarded the items as well, every one of them emanating a dense bloodlust. Every player's ID was pitch black, revealing their statuses as dark players. With one look at these players, Phoenix Rain's teammates shuddered. Bloodhand Yama. Phoenix Rain was shocked when she realized who the robust man was. Bloodhand Yama might be a foreign name among ordinary players, but it was very well known among the various superpowers. The man was one of the Flower of Seven Sins representatives. He had killed numerous superpowers upper echelons in the past. "Phoenix Pavilion Master, your life is mine." Saying so, Bloodhand Yama gestured with a hand. Immediately, the Flower of Seven Sins members around him split into multiple parties and dashed towards Phoenix Rain and the others. He then raised his gray, diamond shield and tightened his grip on his double-headed, one-handed axe before charging like a berserk beast. Although Bloodhand Yama's team had very few members, the majority of them were shield warriors and berserkers. His team only had 5 healers. Because of the narrow canyon they occupied, the Flower of Seven Sins members easily formed a human wall that prevented anyone from passing. Meanwhile, the spectators watched the battle from the waters around Thunder Island. As a result, news of the battle spread quickly to the various superpowers on the island. Nine Dragons Emperor really is ruthless. Despite being from the same guild, he is trying to annihilate Phoenix Rain's forces. Eternal Dead, who currently commanded the Sacred Temple's members as they captured an ancient tower, couldn't help but chuckle when he saw the video. Fortunately, after this battle, Phoenix Rain should realize that without our help, she won't accomplish anything on Thunder Island. How rich. In addition to Bloody Paradise, he invited the Flower of Seven Sins to help him? He'll likely put Phoenix Rain down for good this time. When the Battle Wolves Sirius watched the video his subordinate had transmitted, he could not help his rueful sigh. In the virtual gaming world, both the Flower of Seven Sins and Bloody Paradise were organizations that were moved by money. The Flower of Seven Sins, in particular, was famous for its high prices. Even super guilds would lament the cost of assassinating a vice guild leader-level player. However, Sirius had to admit that the Flower of Seven Sins services were worth every penny. As long as one could afford their prices, the organization would guarantee any player's death. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, the Flower of Seven Sins members slammed into Phoenix Rain's group. Bloodhand Yama easily made his way through the blockade of Phoenix Pavilion members. As if he could predict the future, he dodged or blocked every attack sent his way. When his double-headed axe descended, it always found its mark. As a result, Bloodhand Yama slaughtered the Phoenix Pavilion's refinement realm experts and slowly, but surely made his way towards Phoenix Rain. So strong. Solitary 9, who was also a shield warrior, was shocked by Bloodhand Yama's strength. The man's display was completely different from Feng's in Cold Wind City. Feng had relied on overwhelming attributes to defeat his enemies, whereas Bloodhand Yama used techniques. It seemed as if the shield warrior could block every attack and break every defense before him. However, Phoenix Rain was no ordinary player either. Although her performance in the Sunset Forest hadn't been jaw-dropping, she was by no means weak. In fact, it seemed as if the Phoenix Pavilion Master had become an entirely different person as Solitary 9 watched her fight. Every one of her spells seemed to have a life of their own, avoiding shields and landing solid blows. Her attack method had plenty of variations. Sometimes, her spells descended from the sky, while other spells seemed to manifest from their surroundings. When some of her spells missed their mark, they seemed to make an abrupt U-turn, striking at the target's back. Due to her varied attack patterns, Phoenix Rain's targets struggled to defend themselves. The Flower of Seven Sins suffered numerous casualties at Phoenix Rain's hand. She had even killed 2 party leader-level experts. Meanwhile, Blue Phoenix seamlessly executed triple casting, using her powerful spells to disperse the attacking formation. The level of combat dumbfounded the players watching from safety. Countless players used a variety of combat techniques, which they rarely got to see. Moreover, they watched as players used skills in unheard-of ways. At the end of the day, however, Phoenix Rain's team was wedged between 2 forces. In addition, 9 Dragons Emperor's side had an absolute advantage in numbers. It was only a matter of time before the Phoenix Pavilion Masters team fell. It seems we have no choice but to expose our trump card. Feng, who was fended off the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion's members, could not help but sigh. He then commanded through the team chat, "Cola, Summer, open a path. Aqua and I will bring up the rear." Understood. Cola and Alluring Summer nodded before dashing towards Bloodhand Yama. Chapter 1491, Experts Clashing. Chapter 1491, Experts Clashing. Just as Feng finished issuing orders, a figure appeared behind Cola. "Assassin! Be careful!" Lifeless Thorn shouted to warn the Guardian Knight when he saw the figure. He stood only 5 yards away from Cola, and at that distance he could even sense movement in the grace. Yet despite pushing his senses to their limits, he failed to detect the approaching figure. Only after this figure had revealed himself had he noticed the enemy assassin. He had never heard of such a high-level concealment technique. Although Lifeless Thorn tried to stop the assassin's attack, the latter was simply too fast. A split second after the assassin had appeared, a stake of black light sliced across Cola's back. "Do you really think you have any hope of leaving this place alive?" Shadowtooth, who wore a black mask, hissed after appearing behind Cola. "Assassinate! Pung!" When the black light descended, nearby players heard the sound of shattering glass. Before anyone had noticed, a transparent barrier had manifested behind Cola. Shadowtooth's attack sliced the barrier in half, but Cola remained unharmed. "Someone blocked my attack?" Shadowtooth was caught off guard. He turned to search his surroundings, intent on finding the player that had blocked his blade. The assassin's gaze soon found Alluring Summer, who wore pitch-black mage robes and wielded a blue wooden staff. She actually stopped Shadowtooth's ambush? Just who is that female elementalist? 9 Dragons Emperor, who commanded the battle from afar, shot Alluring Summer a glance. Shadowtooth was the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's #1 expert. Both his skills and items ranked among the best in the guild. Even Martial Dragon, who had grasped a domain, could not always fend off Shadowtooth's ambushes. 9 Dragons Emperor wouldn't have been terribly surprised to see a melee player with fast reactions fend off Shadowtooth's strike, but it had been an elementalist's. It was unbelievable. "Young lady, your reaction speed is quite impressive, but all you've done is called death upon yourself," Shadowtooth said in a chilling tone, narrowing his eyes at alluring Summer. He then transformed into a shadow, dashing towards the elementalist as he ignored Kola. Once an assassin failed an ambush, they'd have a very difficult time killing an MT of the same level. On the other hand, killing a cloth armor class was easy. This was especially true for Shadowtooth, who had recently obtained the epic-ranked Shadow Boots. These epic boots increased his initial acceleration to 20% of his maximum movement speed, boosting his dexterity to a whole new level. The greatest difference between expert and ordinary players was typically their dexterity. Even with the same attributes, experts seemed faster when they moved. In contrast, ordinary players typically looked like robots, their actions dull and predictable. This was due to a lack of dexterity. Players' dexterity mainly manifested in their acceleration, how quickly one could go from 0% of their maximum speed to 100% and vice versa, not one's maximum speed. The more dexterous one was, the shorter the interval. Players would then be capable of accomplishing feats that were normally impossible. If a player could begin accelerating at 20% of their maximum movement speed, the change would undoubtedly increase their dexterity by a large margin. Shadowtooth dodged one spell after another. Even when numerous melee experts blocked his path, he easily maneuvered his way through the gaps without getting caught. Lifeless Thorn even executed a perfect split spear, but the combat technique was utterly useless against the assassin. Not only had Lifeless Thorn failed to hit Shadowtooth, but he had even been struck by the man's counterattack. Despite Shadowtooth countering with an ordinary attack, the impact threw Lifeless Thorn over a dozen yards away, his HP instantly falling by 1/6 of its maximum. How is that guy so fast? The outcome stunned Cleansing Whistle and the other Asura members. They never thought that Lifeless Thorn could be repelled so easily. Fortunately, all of the players on Thunder Island were prohibited from using Berserk skills. The consequences would have been unimaginable if Lifeless Thorn had been struck by an empowered Shadowtooth. After removing the Berserker from his path, Shadowtooth quickly reached Alluring Summer, slashing Magic Breaker at the Elementalist's throat. Die! Shadowtooth activated the Tier 1 skill, Dark Blade, without hesitation. Not only was this skill impossible to block, but it also ignored the target's defense. Most importantly, the skill would silence the target for 5 seconds when struck. Even an ordinary expert could easily defeat a magical class player who couldn't cast spells for 5 seconds. However, just before the assassin's blade bit into Alluring Summer, several arcs of golden electricity wrapped around him and sealed his movements. What accurate judgment! Shadowtooth was slightly surprised to see the arcs binding him. Restriction-type control skills and spells weren't usually instantaneous. As a result, players had to predict a moving target's progress and react accordingly. Although Shadowtooth had expected Alluring Summer to attempt to stop him with a control skill as he approached, he had not expected the woman to use herself as bait, taking advantage of the instant he paused to attack. However, Shadowtooth had reacted quickly as well. When he realized that he couldn't move, he used a control removal skill to break free. He then swung Magic Breaker at the Elementalist once more. However, Alluring Summer had prepared for this, taking half a step back. Since she had stopped Shadowtooth a second beforehand, he had lost his momentum. As a result, Magic Breaker's speed had decreased significantly, giving Alluring Summer enough time to retreat and barely avoid the short sword. Amazing! When Lifeless Thorn, who stood in the distance, saw this, he was astounded by Alluring Summer's control over the battlefield. Alluring Summer waved her staff after dodging Shadowtooth's attack. Suddenly, numerous blue, basketball-sized lightning balls appeared around the Elementalist. A moment later, all 30-plus lightning balls bombarded Shadowtooth from multiple different directions. The assassin had no choice but to retreat temporarily. But as if the lightning balls had locked onto him, they moved towards his blind spots. In the end, even a domain realm expert like Shadowtooth was forced to activate Wind Steps, utilizing the moment of invulnerability to retreat. Why does Zero Wing have so many experts? Nine Dragons Emperor was stunned. He had never expected Zero Wing to have more people capable of forcing Shadowtooth back. Elsewhere, Kola arrived to help Phoenix reign, charging at the approaching Bloodhand Yama. Despite this, the man showed no signs of avoiding the Guardian Knight. Instead, he raised his shield and increased his speed. One was a shield warrior, while the other was a Guardian Knight. Both players had high HP and defense, Neither of them was afraid of a head-on collision. Boom! When the two shields collided, a powerful shockwave shook their surroundings, causing nearby players to shudder involuntarily. Bloodhand Yama, who had been unstoppable thus far, had taken a step back. In contrast, Kola actually remained steady. The difference between their strengths was obvious at a glance. Is this for real? Someone actually stopped Bloodhand Yama. The various superpowers watching the fight with their magic mirrors were shocked by Kola's strength. None could believe that someone had stopped the famous Bloodhand Yama. Bloodhand Yama was famous for his violence in the virtual gaming world. He had always been a shield warrior and pursued brute strength. Unlike ordinary MTs, Bloodhand Yama focused on strength when allocating his free attribute points and selecting weapons and equipment. Moreover, in addition to his shield and double-headed axe, his chest piece, helmet, and gloves were epic rank. The man didn't bother to hide his gear's glow effects. Yet, despite such excellent gear, he had lost a battle of strength. It was simply inconceivable. Chapter 1492, Dragon Slayer's Power. Chapter 1492, Dragon Slayer's Power. After getting repulsed by Kola, Bloodhand Yama did not evince even the slightest bit of anger or frustration. On the contrary, he licked his lips and revealed an excited expression. Immediately after, he raised his shield and charged at Kola again. This time, however, he did not go for a frontal assault. Instead, just when Bloodhand Yama was about to clash with Kola, he suddenly changed his footwork, generating an afterimage in his original location as he circled around and avoided Kola's charge, leaving the Guardian Knight to hit only air. Immediate after, Bloodhand Yama appeared on Kola's right, the double-headed axe in his hand striking down at Kola's side abdomen, which was not protected by the Guardian Knight's shield, with lightning speed. Dang! Following which, a crisp clang resounded in the surroundings. Dazzling sparks flew as well. At the critical moment, Kola had managed to shift his body sufficiently to allow his one-handed sword to block Bloodhand Yama's attack. Meanwhile, as a result of this clash, Bloodhand Yama staggered back a step. Bloodhand Yama's doppelganger slash actually got blocked? Phoenix Rain, who had initially been preparing to help Kola, could not help but be surprised by this scene. Just how much strength is Zero Wing hiding? She originally thought she had a very clear understanding of Kola's strength. Meanwhile, as far as she knew, Kola was definitely not strong enough to go up against Bloodhand Yama, even though he was the lead MT of Zero Wing's main force and possessed quite respectable basic attributes. However, with the facts placed before her, she had no choice but to admit that her understanding was inadequate. In reality, Phoenix Rain wasn't the only person surprised by this outcome. The Flower of Seven Sins members and Nine Dragons Emperor were similarly shocked. Right now, two of their most powerful members were actually stopped. Moreover, Bloodhand Yama's distraction gave Phoenix Rain and the others an opportunity to focus on dealing with the other members of the Flower of Seven Sins. Only Feng found this outcome to be natural. After all, Kola and Alluring Summer had both obtained the Dragon Slayer legacy. The Dragon Slayer legacy was a relatively special legacy. Unlike other legacies, it did not provide players with any elaborate skills or spells. However, it was a legacy that was upgradable. If the legacy were fully upgraded, it would not be the slightest bit inferior to a peak legacy. The reason for this was the dragon power players received when obtaining the Dragon Slayer legacy. The denser the dragon power inside a player's body was, the greater the power they would be able to exhibit. Legends had it that the power of the strongest dragon slayer in history surpassed even that of dragons. Now that Kola and Alluring Summer had become dragon slayers, their life ratings were superior to that of Tier 2 players. Hence, their basic attributes, physiques, and reaction speeds were not something players of the same level and tier could compare to. These attributes would only become increasingly stronger as Kola and Alluring Summer obtained more dragon origin crystals. At that time, their life ratings would be able to reach the same level as dragons. In God's domain, dragons were the symbol of death and destruction. If players could achieve a life rating equal to dragons, one could just imagine how strong they could become. They could easily overwhelm even players that had demonized. Meanwhile, on Thunder Island, which prevented players from using berserk skills, Kola's and Alluring Summer's basic attributes were most likely inferior to only Feng's own. As for their physiques, theirs were even slightly superior to his own. This was the reason Feng had tasked the two of them with opening up a path for the team. In terms of techniques, Bloodhand Yama and Shadowtooth indeed possessed an overwhelming advantage over Kola and Alluring Summer. However, the difference in tiers and the power of the Dragon Slayer class were more than enough to offset the difference in techniques and allow Kola and Alluring Summer to just barely surpass the two domain realm experts. With Bloodhand Yama tied down, Phoenix Rain and Blue Phoenix were able to coordinate their attacks with each other and relentlessly reduce the member count of the Flower of Seven Sins. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before Phoenix Rain's team broke out of the encirclement. Dragon Pavilion Master, Zero Wing has really hidden a lot of its power. With Phoenix Rain's capabilities, I'm afraid it'll take only another minute or two for her team to escape the encirclement, Undead said, chuckling as he looked at the distant Flower of Seven Sins members fighting. Are you really sure you don't need my help? Hearing Undead's words, Nine Dragons Emperor gritted his teeth and said, Fine. As long as you can pin down Phoenix Rain's team here, I'll give that item to you. Although he had managed to invite Bloody Paradise to aid him, getting Undead to personally take action was a whole other story. However, with the situation having reached this point, he couldn't care less about paying the additional cost right now. If he failed to get rid of Phoenix Rain in this favorable terrain, doing so would become much more difficult afterwards. Thanks a lot, Undead said, smiling faintly. He then started pacing slowly towards the battlefield. Upon Undead's entry into the battlefield, the Bloody Paradise members suddenly underwent a change. As if they had entered into a frenzy, they disregarded all costs to open up a path for Undead. As for Undead himself, he chanted an incantation as he walked forward. Suddenly, a pitch-black magic array appeared in the sky, enveloping half of the battlefield. The ambient mana then began surging towards the magic array, forming numerous pitch-black spears. Tier 1 Curse, Dark Feathers. Disappear. Undead swung down his staff. Suddenly, several hundred pitch-black spears descended from the skies. As if they possessed a life of their own, these pitch-black spears all struck at the defensive blind spots of the enemy players. Each spear carried the power of a Tier 1 peak attack. Even MTs with high defense and magic resistance lost over 6,000 HP when struck. As for the other classes, they received over minus 10,000 damage from each spear. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black spears killed over a dozen players who failed to defend themselves properly. Even Solitary 9, who possessed the Titan Guard, could not repulse every spear sent at him and ended up getting struck 8 times. If not for him activating Titan's Heart, his HP would have long since ended up at a critical level. Who is that man? Cleansing Whistle's expression darkened considerably when she stared at Undead. She felt that Undead was simply too terrifying. After all, the man had actually managed to control hundreds of pitch-black spears simultaneously, making the spears move as if they were alive. Fortunately, she stood quite a distance from Undead and got struck by only 3 spears. Had she been any closer to the Elementalist, she might have lost her life already. So this is the 11th ranking expert on the God's Domain experts list? Gentle Snow's expression turned grim as she looked at Undead moving slowly in her direction. With her basic attributes and combat standards, she would be able to handle a dozen or so of those pitch-black spears simultaneously at most. If she had to go up against more than 100 of those spears, however, she would most likely have to activate the 7 Luminaries Battle Armor's active skill, Sky God's Glory, in order to survive. Not to mention, Undead had only used 1 spell thus far, yet he had already wreaked so much devastation. If they allowed the Elementalist to continue casting spells freely, the consequences would definitely be unimaginable. Phoenix Rain, who was currently fending off the Flower of Seven Sins members, also wore a grim expression when she saw Undead entering the battlefield. Undead was nicknamed the Devil's Hand. The man was capable of exhibiting any spell or skill to its fullest potential. Moreover, his ability to control the situation of a battlefield was peerless. He was most suited to group battles. Individually, he was also much stronger than old monsters like Bloodhand Yama and Shadowtooth. It was precisely because of Undead that even Ku Rong, the great pavilion master of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, feared Bloody Paradise greatly. Rain, stop your futile resistance and just obediently accept your fate. Nine Dragons Emperor said mockingly when he saw the tides of the battle turning in his favor. He was fully aware of just how powerful undead was. Even Martial Dragon, who had grasped a domain, could survive against undead for only a short time. Moreover, both sides were currently intermingled, making it impossible for anyone to use large-scale destruction spells without resulting in friendly fire. In such a situation, undead, an elementalist capable of freely controlling his spells, was practically a godlike existence. Guild leader, should I head over there? Aqua Rose suggested. At the moment, she was going up against more than 3 refinement realm experts simultaneously. However, seeing Undead and Bloody Paradise's members getting out of control, she decided it was more important to deal with them first. No need. Your spells have too much AoE. They're not suitable for this narrow and chaotic battlefield. I'll deal with him, Feng said, shaking his head before dashing towards Undead. Chapter 1493, 1-on-2. Chapter 1493, 1-on-2. On the chaotic battlefield, although Bloody Paradise's members numbered only around 60, the presence of undead elevated the overall strength of the team by a significant margin. The reason for this was Undead's ability to aid his allies during their time of need. At the same time, he was also capable of creating gaps for these allies to strike at their opponents. He was like the overlord of the battlefield, and even Feng could not help but feel admiration for Undead's capabilities. Undead could not only achieve absolute control over the battlefield with his spells, but also freely manipulate his enemies on the battlefield. It was precisely because of this talent of his that the secret pavilion had nicknamed him the Devil's Hand. When Feng entered within 60 yards of Undead, over 20 fireballs and ice spears suddenly flew at him. To Feng, however, attacks of this degree did not even warrant him blocking them. Making a slight change to his footwork, he easily maneuvered his way out of the attack trajectory of these spells. While he was swiftly making his way towards Undead, 3 sword lights suddenly cut at him. Not only were these 3 slashes angled so that they sealed off Feng's path of advancement, but they also prevented him from evading them, leaving him with no choice but to receive them with his swords. Dang! 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 Feng promptly blocked the 3 slashes before they could even get within 5 yards of him. Immediately after, the shadow of a figure descended from the sky. At the same time, a towering pillar of flames also descended directly towards Feng. Flame slash. However, Feng, who was capable of pushing his 5 senses to their very limits, had long since noticed this attack. Twisting his body, he executed an upward chop, sending 3 black arcs of light to counter the descending flame slash. Boom! When the intense flames collided with the 3 converging slashes of Feng's chop, a powerful shockwave spread to the surroundings. As the shockwave spread, it also repulsed the descending figure, which landed roughly 6 yards away from Feng. Is there a need for the almighty commander of the War Dragon Legion to make such petty little moves? Feng glanced at the figure before him. This figure belonged to none other than Martial Dragon, the commander of the War Dragon Legion. He was also 9 Dragons Emperor's most trusted aide. At this moment, Martial Dragon wielded a silver greatsword engraved with crimson runes and wore silvery gray battle armor. He had also reached level 49 already, and was not one bit inferior when compared to Phoenix Rain. Moreover, if one paid close attention to Martial Dragon's body, they would notice that the number of epic equipment he possessed was not one bit inferior to Bloodhand Yama's. Notably, the greatsword Martial Dragon wielded, which was named Silver Snow, was the 17th ranking sword among God's Domain's 36 famed swords. At the same time, it was also Martial Dragon's trademark in Feng's previous life. Despite Silver Snow being ranked only slightly higher than Killing Ray, due to it being a 2-handed sword, it possessed significantly more power than Killing Ray. As expected of Zero Wing's honorary elder, you've managed to block my attack even under such circumstances. Martial Dragon was not the slightest bit agitated by Feng's mocking words. On the contrary, he laughed and said, however, with me here, nobody will be able to approach Undead. If anybody else spoke these words, they would definitely be laughed at for their foolishness. However, when Martial Dragon said them, nobody on the battlefield felt anything wrong with them. Since Martial Dragon was a domain realm expert of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, no player or power dared to look down on him. Then, you'll have to be able to stop me first. Saying so, Feng executed void steps and disappeared from everyone's vision. Undead's presence was like a berserk potion. If he did not stop the man now, the damage that Undead and Bloody Paradise's members could cause would be no laughing matter. Originally, Feng had thought to use a silencing skill. However, the uniqueness of the battlefield on Thunder Island did not just prevent players from using berserk skills. Silencing skills were similarly ineffective on Thunder Island. Hence, he had no choice but to personally take action now. Don't even think of getting past me so easily. At the same time as Feng disappeared, Martial Dragon's greatsword seemingly extended itself as a silver beam of light shot out from the weapon and landed at a location roughly 10 yards away from Martial Dragon. When the beam struck, it left behind a deep gash on the ground. Meanwhile, Feng had also suddenly appeared before this gash. Sure enough, Void Steps is utterly useless against Domain Realm experts. Sending a glance at Martial Dragon, who remained standing in his original position, Feng decided to give up on dealing with Undead first. Domain Realm experts were capable of not only pushing their 5 senses to their very limits, but also observing their surroundings from a third person's perspective. Void Steps was footwork specifically meant to trick the opponent's sense of sight only. Hence, fooling Martial Dragon with Void Steps was simply impossible. The only reason Feng had even tried executing the footwork was in the hopes that it would delay Martial Dragon's reaction by even a moment. Now, however, it would seem that Void Steps was incapable of doing even that. What? Giving up already? Martial Dragon chuckled as he looked at his motionless opponent. In response, Feng simply continued silently observing Martial Dragon. Compared to the fact that Martial Dragon was a Domain Realm expert, Feng was more wary of the greatsword in the Berserker's hands. As one of the 36 famed swords of God's domain, Silver Snow possessed special hidden effects, just like the Abyssal Blade did. While the Abyssal Blade could gather the surrounding mana around its user, Silver Snow could extend the range of its attacks. Of course, this extension was not without limits. However, it still gave Martial Dragon a maximum attack range of 15 yards. Although this hidden effect could be maintained for only extremely short intervals, it was already more than enough for an expert player. When experts fought, they would always gauge their opponent's attack range before going in for an attack. If the other side could suddenly extend their attack range, one could just imagine the effect it would have on a battle. Meanwhile, being able to extend his attack range up to 15 yards allowed Martial Dragon to cover more ground in his defense. This was also the reason why the Berserker had spoken such boastful words earlier. Moreover, this attack extension was still not the most powerful aspect of Silver Snow, which instead lay in its ability to execute 2-stage attacks. The famed sword was capable of saving up to 10 cuts made before for 15 seconds. Any enemy that came into contact with these cuts would receive damage. This was also the only skill Silver Snow possessed, Broken Mark. Aside from Broken Mark, Silver Snow possessed no other skills. Meanwhile, it was also precisely due to this skill that Silver Snow ranked 17th among God's Domain's 36 famed swords. In other words, Martial Dragon could set up invisible traps anywhere within 15 yards of himself. Hence, not only did Feng need to be careful of Martial Dragon's attacks while fighting, but he also needed to avoid stepping anywhere the Berserker had cut before. Since you're not coming, I'll head over to you instead. Martial Dragon had no intention of dragging out this fight. Upon seeing his opponent remaining unresponsive, he immediately activated Charge on Feng. At this moment, Undead, who was slowly making his way towards Phoenix Rain, also took notice of Feng. He immediately began chanting incantations, summoning an ice wall to help Martial Dragon block off Feng's path of retreat, and at the same time sending a Tier 1 flame barrage at Feng's defensive blind spot. Both Martial Dragon and Undead were Domain Realm experts, and both were capable of clearly perceiving every one of Feng's movements. Hence, when facing the attacks of these two experts, Feng would have no choice but to receive their attacks, as dodging was simply impossible. How despicable. Those two actually have the gall to work together. When Gentle Snow saw Martial Dragon and Undead ganging up on Feng, she wanted to move in and help Feng. However, Blood Dragon and 2 other Refinement Realm experts had her thoroughly pinned down. As for Feng, his 2 opponents were similarly extraordinary players capable of going up against a great lord of the same level. Despite Feng having the advantage in basic attributes, If he was not careful when dealing with their attacks, they would kill him very easily. Just when Martial Dragon's Silver Snow and Undead's barrage of fireballs were about to descend on Feng, Feng tightened his grip on his two swords and executed Sword's Orbit. Suddenly, the ice wall behind him and the sword lights and fireballs before him were all shattered by Sword's Orbit. What powerful attributes! Undead was slightly surprised when he saw his ice wall shattered. Very quickly, however, he switched his attack method and executed triple casting. Smiling faintly, he said, "Let's see how you deal with this move." Suddenly, several magic arrays appeared around Feng. From the ground, an earthen spike emerged. From the sky, a lightning strike descended. From his surroundings, numerous ice spears stabbed at Feng simultaneously. Meanwhile, Martial Dragon also did not hold back as he executed the Berserker class's strongest Tier 1 skill, Indiscriminate Slash. Suddenly, numerous streaks of silver light interweaved, forming a wall that pushed towards Feng. This overwhelming attack pattern made the scalps of everyone present on the battlefield tingle. Just when these attacks were about to land on Feng, however, Feng abruptly stabbed Killing Ray into the ground. Summon Lightning. Suddenly, arcs of lightning spread out to Feng's surroundings, instantly obliterating the attacks of Undead and Martial Dragon. What a powerful skill! Martial Dragon was somewhat surprised by this outcome. He had never thought that Feng would possess a skill capable of wiping out other skills. Nevertheless, he laughed in the next moment and said, "However, I'm sure you can use this skill of yours only once." He and Undead were capable of executing their coordinated attack again after a short cooldown. They could even switch the skills and spells they used and execute other attack patterns. They did not need to rely on powerful skills like Feng did to defend and attack. While it is indeed true that I can only use this skill once within a certain period of time, if the two of you can't coordinate with each other again, then it doesn't really matter, Feng retorted, smiling calmly. He then activated Phantom Kill and 9 Dragons Slash. Chapter 1494, One-Hit Kill. Chapter 1494, One-Hit Kill. The instant Feng activated his skills, the doppelganger created from Phantom Kill immediately activated Wind Blade and made its way towards Undead, while the 16 Abyssal Blade Phantoms summoned by 9 Dragons Slash shot towards Martial Dragon, giving the two no opportunities to react at all. Domain Realm experts were already difficult opponents to deal with, in the first place. With Martial Dragon and Undead now working together, dodging their combination attacks was simply impossible. Undead's spells, in particular, accurately targeted the weaknesses in Feng's defenses. After including Martial Dragon's assistance, the combined assault had already exceeded Sword's Orbit's defensive capabilities. Hence, the only thing Feng could do now was have his doppelganger distract Undead while using ranged attacks to deal with Martial Dragon, who was fond of melee combat. A doppelganger? Undead simply smiled when he saw Feng's doppelganger moving towards him. Immediately, he started triple casting again. Earthen Spear, Ice Blast, Flame Imprint. All 3 spells were Tier 1 spells. Earthen Spear was meant to limit the target's movements, Ice Blast served as a frontal attack and inflicted a movement speed debuff, and Flame Imprint was an aerial attack aimed at the target's defensive blind spot. Under Undead's control, the combination of the 3 spells became an ultimate move that would kill Undead's target with almost absolute certainty. Meanwhile, players usually needed to personally control their doppelgangers. If the player did not devote full concentration to controlling their doppelgangers, said doppelgangers would not exhibit their full potential. Moreover, doppelgangers normally had weaker basic attributes than the main body. Hence, in Undead's opinion, it was simply a joke for Feng to send his doppelganger at him. Elsewhere, the 16 Abyssal Blade Phantoms were like non-existent when going up against Martial Dragon. Despite Feng executing Sword's Orbit with the Sword Phantoms, Martial Dragon managed to evade the attacks sent at him while maintaining a fixed distance from Feng, keeping Feng within the attack range of his Silver Snow. Do you really think you can kill Undead with just a doppelganger? You'll just get yourself killed even quicker by splitting your attention. Noticing Feng's attention wavering slightly, Martial Dragon took advantage of this opportunity to advance abruptly. Suddenly, Martial Dragon disappeared from where he stood, the ground that the Berserker had been standing on shattering from the thrust of his feet. In the next moment, 12 doppelgangers of martial dragon formed around Feng, all 12 of them stabbing their great swords at the surrounded swordsman. Tier 1 taboo skill Dragontooth. If Feng were currently going up against an ordinary expert, even if he split his attention between himself and his doppelganger, he would not have any problems dealing with the said expert. However, his opponent right now was martial dragon. Splitting his attention right now resulted in him exposing even more weak points. Dragontooth. Feng was surprised. He never thought that martial dragon had actually learned the Berserker class's Dragontooth skill. Dragontooth was the fastest Tier 1 skill for Berserkers. Moreover, every attack dealt by the skill carried double the strength of the user. If this skill struck Feng, the consequences would be unimaginable. Die! Martial Dragon shouted. If Feng had been going all out, with his superior attributes, he could easily dodge the majority of Martial Dragon's attacks. However, doing so was much more difficult now that he was splitting his attention between himself and his doppelganger. Just when the 12 attacks were about to land on him, Feng instinctively activated Defensive Blade. In the next moment, the 12 streaks of silver light rapidly approaching Feng stopped abruptly an inch away from his body. However, Martial Dragon had long since anticipated this move. He promptly leaped high up into the air before slamming his greatsword downwards, his entire person seemingly having transformed into a meteor as he plunged towards Feng. Tier 1 taboo skill, Falling Star. This move was the sole Tier 1 AoE skill available to Berserkers. Although the skill had a modest radius of only 10 yards, any enemy within that 10-yard radius would be dealt a devastating blow. Moreover, all players struck would have their movement speed reduced by 80% and reaction speed by 50%. After Falling Star descended, the ground Feng stood on immediately cratered. The surrounding players shuddered involuntarily as they looked at the fiery and smoky pit. So strong! Lifeless Thorn, who was fighting a short distance away, was indescribably shocked when he saw this scene. Martial Dragon had completed his two-pronged attack so quickly and smoothly that it looked as if it was just one big attack to Lifeless Thorn. There was no lag in between the two attacks whatsoever. Rain, now that Zero Wings Feng has been killed, I want to see just how long you will continue struggling. Nine Dragons Emperor sneered when he saw Feng disappearing completely. In Phoenix Rain's team, Feng was undoubtedly the strongest player. He was also one of the few players capable of going up against Martial Dragon. Now that Feng had already been killed, Phoenix Rain's team would have a hard time stopping Martial Dragon. However, as soon as Nine Dragons Emperor was done speaking, Feng's doppelganger, whose HP had previously fallen to a critical level from Undead's relentless attacks, suddenly recovered back to full HP. How is this possible? Did he switch places with his doppelganger? Undead was slightly confused when he saw Feng's doppelganger recovering back to full HP. However, he very quickly realized what had happened. He immediately swung his staff and summoned an ice wall to block Feng, then smiled and said, "Although you managed to find your way over, you are simply throwing your life away. Without your life-saving skill, how are you going to block this move of mine?" As Undead said so, a pitch-black magic array formed beneath Feng's feet. Pitch-black barriers then emerged from it. In the next moment, these barriers began twisting and constricting the space Feng was in. This move was not a spell Undead had learned. Rather, it was an additional skill, Dark Illumination of Hell King's Eye, the staff he wielded. When activated, the skill would freeze the space around the targeted area, preventing players caught within its range from moving. Afterwards, the frozen space would be obliterated. Although the skill's AoE was not particularly large, it was much stronger than ordinary large-scale destruction spells. Turn to dust. Undead tapped the butt of his staff on the ground. Boom. Suddenly, the space Feng was in shattered like a mirror. Why bother? Martial Dragon sighed when he looked at the shattered space. Although he had not sensed Feng switching positions with his doppelganger, a frontal confrontation with an elementalist like Undead was pure suicide. Even Martial Dragon himself did not dare to approach Undead in a fight. The reason for this was because the closer the range, the shorter the distance Undead's spells needed to travel. With Undead's perfect control over his spells, even Martial Dragon would find himself overwhelmed if he stood within 10 yards of the elementalist. After the space around Feng was utterly obliterated, just as Undead turned his focus towards Aqua Rose and Alluring Summer, a playful voice suddenly entered his ears. That's it. Undead whirled back to look at Feng's original location, a grim expression suddenly appearing on his face. At this moment, Feng could still be seen actually standing in the shattered space. Moreover, he was entirely unscathed. Even his HP remained at 100%. How is this possible? Is it invulnerability? Undead's gaze turned serious as he studied the faint, golden barrier enveloping Feng's body. Invulnerability skills with long durations were exceedingly rare in God's domain. Even the various super guilds had only a few people with such skills. He had never thought that Feng would actually have one. That's right, Feng said, laughing. He then moved straight towards Undead. Although Undead tried to cast a spell to stop Feng, the latter had already disappeared from where he stood. Then, Feng popped up right in front of Undead. Tier 2 taboo skill, Instant Strike. Although Undead reacted rapidly and had immediately used Blink to distance himself from Feng, the moment before he disappeared, a blue flash cut across his body. In the next moment, Undead's body appeared at a location 15 yards away. At this time, however, a flower of blood had already bloomed on Undead's chest. As for Undead himself, he was like a puppet that had its strings cut, his body collapsing powerlessly to the ground. So fast. Commander? How is this possible? The members of Bloody Paradise were stupefied when they saw Undead's HP bottoming out. Chapter 1495, 12 Firmaments. Chapter 1495, 12 Firmaments. Without Instant Strike, Feng would definitely have a hard time killing Domain Realm experts. This was especially true on a chaotic battlefield where he couldn't use any of his berserk skills. With the support of expert healers, his enemy could easily retreat and recover if he didn't finish the enemy off quickly enough. In the end, they would fight an endless battle of attrition. This wasn't the outcome Feng wanted. His team lost members with each passing second. In a drawn-out battle, he would lose. Meanwhile, Instant Strike had a limited range and a very long cooldown. With how far apart Martial Dragon and Undead stood from each other, Feng could only use the skill to finish one of them off. Between the two Domain Realm experts, Feng had decided to deal with Undead, who posed the greatest threat to his team. In fact, he had sent his doppelganger to harass Undead precisely to set up an opportunity to use Instant Strike against the Elementalist. However, Undead was quite intelligent. The Elementalist had maintained a certain distance from his doppelganger, attacking from his maximum range. However, when Undead had assumed Feng had died, he had relaxed, giving Feng the opportunity he needed. Even so, he had nearly allowed Undead to get away. Fortunately, he had triggered Killing Ray's lightning effect, increasing his initial attack speed to 50% of the maximum. When Undead collapsed, Bloody Paradise's members were dumbfounded. Undead was the adventurer team's pillar of strength. Now that this pillar had fallen, the remaining members had lost their will to fight. All that was left was horror. They were especially afraid of that swordsman's frightening strike. Before they had realized what was happening, their commander had lost his life. Although Undead was only an elementalist, he had more than 30,000 HP. Yet, Feng had devoured every hit point in one hit. In other words, this swordsman could instant kill any cloth armor class on the battlefield. He could even take out MTs with high HP and defense in 2 or 3 hits. How is he so fast? Nine Dragons Emperor, who watched proudly from a distance, wore a grim expression as he watched Feng. Most of the experts on the battlefield might not have understood what had just happened, but he had caught a glimpse. The instant Feng had appeared before Undead, the latter had activated Blink to escape, yet not even the skill's instantaneous activation could take full effect before Feng completed his slash. This godlike attack speed was simply unheard of. If he allowed Feng to get close to him, Nine Dragons Emperor felt a chill crawl down his spine. This is the commander's true strength. How strong is he? Not even such a powerful elementalist could escape the commander after activating Blink. Solitary 9 and the other Asura members were shocked when they saw Feng's enemies afraid, keeping their distance from the swordsman. Asura's members dreamed of achieving such a feat. However, while everyone watched Feng in shock, Nine Dragons Emperor finally made his move. A dark gray longbow, engraved with magical patterns, appeared in his left hand. The mana around Nine Dragons Emperor surged towards the weapon. At the same time, Nine Dragons Emperor retrieved an arrow covered in magical, crimson patterns from his bag. The magic patterns on the longbow and arrow seemed similar. It was obvious that they were a part of a set. Pavilion Master? Martial Dragon was surprised as he watched his Pavilion Master pull out the weapon and ammo. The longbow in Nine Dragons Emperor's hand was called Star Shatterer, a very special magic weapon. When used with its paired arrow, the longbow would gain the additional skill, 12 Firmaments. When activated, the skill would launch 12 attacks simultaneously, each of which had enough power to wound a Grand Lord of the same level. Moreover, the 12 attacks were impossible to dodge. The attacks would even break through invulnerability. It was an ultimate move that could only be used once every 10 hours. Not even the Great Pavilion Master knew about Nine Dragons Emperor's Star Shatterer. He had initially planned to save this trump card for Thunder Island's powerful guardian bosses. Martial Dragon had never expected the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion Master to use the longbow against Feng. Die! Nine Dragons Emperor pulled back Star Shatterer's bowstring, stretching the weapon into a full circle. He aimed for Feng, who stood nearly 100 yards away, before activating 12 Firmaments. The Ranger class already had the longest attack range of all of the various ranged classes. However, even after reaching Tier 1, Rangers only had a maximum attack range of 52 yards, yet 12 Firmaments could double that range, locking onto targets up to 104 yards away. Show! 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 Suddenly, the Crimson Arrow Nine Dragons Emperor had knocked Split into 12 streaks of dark blue light that flew towards Feng. As these arrows moved, they tore through space as if tearing through paper, leaving one spatial rip after another in their wake. After killing undead, Feng had planned to take advantage of the shock to take down a few more enemies around him. But when he caught sight of Nine Dragons Emperor's longbow from the corner of his eye, a chill crawled down his spine. Star Shatterer had been incredibly famous in his previous life. The longbow ranked 28th on the magic weapon ranking list in God's domain. In the hands of a Tier 2 player, the weapon would even injure a mythic monster of the same level. Only, Feng hadn't realized that Nine Dragons Emperor had obtained Star Shatterer so early in the game. Upon seeing the 12 arrows flying from Nine Dragons Emperor's longbow, Feng instinctively activated Void Shield, a protective barrier capable of absorbing damage equal to 10 times his maximum HP. He then executed Sword's Orbit to deflect the incoming arrows. Once the attack had locked on, 12 Firmaments would follow him wherever he went. He had no choice but to take the attacks head-on. Fortunately, Instant Strike was still in effect. Immediately, a galaxy of stars formed around him, clashing with the 12 streaks of dark blue light. Boom, boom, boom. Each attack pushed Feng several yards back. By the time he blocked the 12th attack, he was 60 yards from where he had started, and his Void Shield had shattered. Feng's HP fell like there was no tomorrow. 90%, 70%, 50%. When he eventually stopped sliding backward, his HP bar stabilized. He's not dead. How is that possible? Nine Dragons Emperor flashed Feng an incredulous look. He simply could not believe that his attack, which could even wound a Grand Lord, had failed to kill Feng. Moreover, although Feng looked fairly miserable, even sporting a cut on his cheek from the pressure of the attack, he still had over 20% of his HP. The 12 Firmaments is really no joke. Feng smiled bitterly as he glanced down at his numb hands. If not for his strength, which even exceeded a great lord's of the same level, Void Shield, and sufficient reaction speed that attack would have taken his life. Everyone pay attention. Miracle's forces are heading this way. If we can hold out for a little while longer, victory will be ours. Nine Dragons Emperor declared. Anyone who kills Phoenix Rain will receive a piece of level 50 dark gold equipment. I'll also reward anybody who kills Yifeng 1,000 magic crystals and a piece of level 50 dark gold equipment. Nine Dragons Emperor hadn't thought that he'd encounter anyone who could threaten his life. But after watching Feng take undeads, he no longer felt safe. If he did not get rid of Feng now, and the man's skills finished their cooldowns, the consequences would be unimaginable. He had to prioritize the swordsman's death, forcing him to lose a level and a piece of equipment. If an expert of Feng's caliber lost a piece of equipment that he was particularly compatible with, his combat power would plummet. Only then would 9 Dragons Emperor's mind be at peace. Of course, killing Feng multiple times would be the best outcome. Level 50 Dark Gold Equipment. All hail the Pavilion Master. Hearing 9 Dragons Emperor's announcement, many of the players on his team turned towards Feng, eager to earn the rewards. When Phoenix Rain's team members heard the declaration, they were confused. They weren't surprised by the bounty on Phoenix Rain's head, but he had also placed an even higher bounty on Feng's. The Phoenix Pavilion members didn't understand why 9 Dragons Emperor would prioritize the swordsman's death over Phoenix Rain's. However, what truly made Phoenix Rain's team members despair was the news that Miracle's members had almost reached the battlefield, coming to assist their enemy. He's already colluded with Miracle? Feng felt pressed for time as he watched his enemy's morale recover. He shifted his gaze towards Bloodhand Yama and the other Flower of Seven Sins members. It seems that I can't afford to hold back any longer. As Feng made his way towards Bloodhand Yama, he activated divine steps to nullify the incoming attacks from the enemy experts around him. Both of his hands were still numb, and the best he could do was maintain his grip on his weapons, much less deflect an attack. A moment later, Feng reached Phoenix Rain's section of the battlefield. He stabbed the abyssal blade into the ground and activated the evolved abyssal curse. Chapter 1496, One Move, One Kill. Chapter 1496, One Move, One Kill. As abyssal curse activated, a large, pitch-black magic array appeared beneath the Flower of Seven Sins members. Black fog rose from the array, tangling around the expert players and restricting their movements. Moreover, they received a debuff that reduced their basic attributes by 20% for 10 minutes. Although the Flower of Seven Sins members had reacted very quickly and immediately activated their control removal skills, breaking free of the fog, the 20% reduction to their basic attributes decreased their combat power significantly. The Flower of Seven Sins MTs, in particular, watched their HPs drain as they tried to protect their DPS experts. Even with the support of numerous healers, their HP bars steadily fell. Even Bloodhand Yama, who had been overwhelming Kola, found himself on the defensive. What a powerful control skill. Phoenix Rain shot Feng a glance after seeing the assassin group's combat power decrease drastically. She had never thought that Feng still had such a trump card. In one move, Feng had turned the tide of battle. In reality, he hadn't wanted to reveal this move. Abyssal Curse would work wonders in a large battle where players couldn't use tools, berserker skills, or silencing skills, but there were many superpowers fighting for control of Thunder Island. The designated contest area wasn't particularly large, so it was easy for the different powers to encounter each other. Meanwhile, Abyssal Curse had a 20-minute cooldown. If his team met another superpower during the cooldown, he'd have one less trump card. When 9 Dragons Emperor saw the results of Feng's attack, his expression darkened. The Flower of Seven Sins members already had a numerical disadvantage against the Phoenix Pavilion's team. They had to rely on their MTs and healers to hold on. Now that their basic attributes had decreased, they would have a much harder time holding back Phoenix Rain and her people. Marshal, take some men to help Bloodhand. Do not let Phoenix Rain's group break free of the encirclement. 9 Dragons Emperor commanded. Thanks to Feng's move, the Flower of Seven Sins suffered one casualty after another. At this rate, Phoenix Rain's team would escape in less than a minute. If that happened, it'd become much harder to take her team down. Understood. Upon receiving his orders, Marshal Dragon led 30-plus melee players, who still had a fair amount of their HP, to the Flower of Seven Sins corner of the battlefield. Although Gentle Snow and Zhao Yueru tried their best to stop Marshal Dragon when they tried to move across the field, Marshal Dragon easily evaded the skills and spells sent his way. When he couldn't dodge an attack, he blocked it with a casual swing of his greatsword. The healers in the rear quickly replenished any HP he lost. Meanwhile, Phoenix Rain's team put everything they had into assaulting the Flower of Seven Sins members, who were on the defense, hoping to break free of the battlefield as quickly as possible. Don't even dream of getting past us. When Bloodhand Yama saw that less than 30 players remained on his team, he gritted his teeth and activated the Tier 1 taboo skill for Shield Warriors, Iron Fortress. Suddenly, with Bloodhand Yama in the center, A silver glow enveloped all of his teammates within a 30-yard radius. The affected players instantly received a buff that decreased incoming damage by 30% and increased their maximum HP by 15%. As for Bloodhand Yama, he received a buff that decreased incoming damage by 40% while increasing his maximum HP by 20%. Both buffs had a 12-minute duration. Not only did Iron Fortress alleviate some of the pressure on the healers, but the affected players' HPs also began to increase despite the bombardment they received. Good. As expected of Bloodhand Yama. Nine Dragons Emperor, who helped Martial Dragon open a path, rejoiced when he saw the Flower of Seven Sins members recover. Suddenly, a shadow appeared before Bloodhand Yama's teammates. A scorching streak of light then sliced through the flank of a level 47 Guardian Knight. Although the Guardian Knight had sensed the incoming attack, he hadn't been able to respond quickly enough. Pung! The level 47 Guardian Knight, who had more than half of his HP remaining, lost every point instantly, shock coloring his features as he stared at the figure before him. The figure was none other than Feng. After a few seconds of rest, his hands had recovered, and the allied healers had restored his HP. Before the Guardian Knight had hit the ground, Feng appeared before a level 48 Berserker. Although the Berserker tried to hack at the swordsman with his battle axe, Feng easily blocked the weapon with the Abyssal Blade. Killing Ray, which radiated a scorching heat, mercilessly pierced the Berserker's heart. Flame bursts power, turning the player into a pile of smoldering ash instantly. Feng then attacked a nearby shield warrior. By the time Feng used all 15 attack counts, he had killed 8 Flower of Seven Sins members, instantly reducing the organization's survivors to 19. The players nearby gasped at the scene. Even the weakest Flower of Seven Sins member present was a refinement realm expert. In a first-rate guild, these experts would easily rank among the best, yet before Feng, they seemed as if they were made of paper. Feng! Bloodhand Yama glared at Feng with bloodshot eyes as he watched the man tear through his teammates. Immediately, he shook off Cola and charged at Feng. Before he reached the swordsman, he leaped into the air and swung his double-headed axe down at Feng's head. Tier 1 taboo skill, Lightning Blast. In the next moment, a lightning bolt descended from the sky and struck Bloodhand Yama's one-handed axe, enhancing its power and speed tremendously. Despite that, Feng casually swung Killing Ray to deflect the attack. Tier 2 skill, Shadow Blade. Boom! When Killing Ray clashed with the double-headed axe, brilliant sparks flew from the weapons. The ground beneath Feng's feet cracked and sunk, extending 10 yards away from the swordsman. He blocked it. Is he even human? That's the commander's strongest move. The Flower of Seven Sins members were stupefied. Not only did Lightning Blast increase its user's strength by 330% and attack speed by 300% for one attack, but it also dealt additional lightning damage. Not even an expert of the same level could block the attack, not to mention dodge it. Yet Feng had blocked Bloodhand Yama's Lightning Blast, and he had only lost around 1/5 of his HP in doing so. How? Bloodhand Yama stared at Feng with a dumbfounded look. He had executed his attack with absolute perfection. Not even a domain realm expert should be able to block the attack in time, dying instantly, yet Feng had kept up with his speed. When Lightning Blast's effects dissipated, something even more shocking happened. Bloodhand Yama collapsed to the ground, his HP mysteriously decreasing at an astonishing rate. What was happening? Everyone was stupefied. Bloodhand Yama had attacked Feng, but he had died instead of the swordsman. What just happened? The nearby crowd was confused. Big Sis Rain, did you see what Feng did just now? Why did Bloodhand Yama die instead of him? Blue Phoenix asked. Bloodhand Yama had focused on killing Feng, but he failed to realize that Feng aimed for his life as well. Although Feng lost the exchange, Bloodhand Yama lost his life, Phoenix Rain explained in a daze. Once she fully processed what had happened, she took a deep breath as she exclaimed, "He really is a madman." Phoenix Rain found it truly hard to imagine that, despite blocking a full-powered attack from an expert like Bloodhand Yama, Feng had the gall to launch a simultaneous attack at the shield warrior's blind spot. Had Feng made the slightest miscalculation, he might have fallen alongside Bloodhand Yama. Chapter 1497, Heroic Stand. Chapter 1497, Heroic Stand. When Bloodhand Yama had died, silence had blanketed the battlefield. The Flower of Seven Sins members had nothing but fear in their eyes as they looked at Feng. Suddenly, the Flower of Seven Sins members scattered, fleeing from Feng in all directions as none of them dared to stand in the swordsman's way. What amazing reaction speed. Bloodhand Yama died just like that. Just what did Feng do? Meanwhile, the various spectating superpowers were stunned. Their peak experts, in particular, watched Feng with grim expressions. Bloodhand Yama had been incredibly fast, yet not only had Feng kept up with the man despite swinging his blade a moment after Bloodhand Yama began his attack, but he had also had the attention to spare while defending himself to use shadow blades against the shield warrior, catching him off guard. It would have been fine if the counterattack had simply caught Bloodhand Yama off guard. What truly shocked the various peak experts was that Feng had killed Bloodhand Yama instantly, despite the shield warrior having activated Iron Fortress and having 2/3 of his HP remaining. Iron Fortress reduced the damage that Bloodhand Yama took by 40% and increased his maximum HP by 20%. In addition, the shield warrior class had other passive skills that reduced incoming damage by a large margin. With Bloodhand Yama's remaining 30,000 plus HP, not even a berserker of the same level should be able to kill him instantly, yet Feng had done just that. The watching experts wondered what would have happened if they had stood in Bloodhand Yama's place. Would they be able to survive? Or Feng's blades claim their lives as well? What everyone didn't know was that, although the counterattack seemed reckless, Feng had calculated the whole encounter. Tier 2 players had a much stronger physique than Tier 1 players. Furthermore, Feng had multiple fragmented legendary items. There was also the fact that he had reduced Bloodhand Yama's basic attributes with Abyssal Curse. Moreover, Bloodhand Yama was a strength-focused shield warrior. To Feng, who had the strength and speed of a great lord of the same level, defending against and killing Bloodhand Yama was no trouble. Feng didn't bother to chase after the fleeing Flower of Seven Sins members. Instead, he picked up the plate armor quizzes Bloodhand Yama had dropped. Although the quizzes weren't epic rank, they were level 45 dark gold equipment. The piece could easily fetch a few hundred gold on the market. After collecting up his loot, Feng turned and dashed towards Martial Dragon. Although no one stood in their path of retreat now, they'd still sustain heavy casualties if they allowed Martial Dragon and his people to pursue and attack. As the battle drug on, Phoenix Rain's team had less than half of its original 200 or so members. In contrast, Nine Dragons Emperor's team still had over 200 players. The gap in both sides' strength continued to grow. If they did not stop Martial Dragon, he'd cripple their team, even if they escaped in the end. Don't even think of getting away so easily. At this point, Nine Dragons Emperor knew that he couldn't stop Phoenix Rain's team from retreating. Immediately, he moved to work alongside Martial Dragon, slaughtering the fleeing players. However, rather than dealing with the moderately skilled players, Martial Dragon and Nine Dragons Emperor targeted Gentle Snow and Zhao Yueru. Suddenly, numerous arrows rained down on Gentle Snow, cutting off her path of retreat. At the same time, Martial Dragon leaped into the air, arriving beside the female berserker. He then ruthlessly brandished his greatsword at the snow goddess. Tier 1 skill, Flaming Cross Slash. As the raging flames approached Gentle Snow, several blue lightning bolts surged towards her from a short distance away, striking down Martial Dragon's Flaming Cross Slash. Feng. As his attack was nullified, Martial Dragon turned towards the lightning's origin. He had previously thought that he could easily take on Feng, but he had learned that he'd have to keep his guard up against the swordsman. The man had already proven his strength when he had killed Undead and Bloodhand Yama. If he wasn't careful, the swordsman might take his life as well. When Gentle Snow noticed that Martial Dragon had been distracted, she breathed a sigh of relief and promptly retreated. Everyone, stop fighting and flee. Feng shouted when he saw his allies fighting desperately. I'll bring up the rear. How bold. Do you really think you can stop us all by yourself? A cold gleam flashed in Nine Dragons Emperor's eyes as he glared at Feng. Although he acknowledged that Feng was quite powerful, the man would be fooling himself if he thought he could stop more than 200 experts by himself. Nine Dragons Emperor and his teammates stopped holding back as they bombarded Phoenix Rain's team with their strongest attacks. However, when the spells and skills were midway through their course, a powerful ripple radiated from the center of the battlefield. Chilling field. When the ripple collided with the enemy's spells and skills, they shattered instantly. In addition, Nine Dragons Emperor and his people, who stood within Chilling Field's range, grew cold as their attributes and movement speeds swiftly decreased. Suddenly, icicles bombarded the melee players chasing after Phoenix Rain's team. Although these melee players tried to defend themselves, the icicles were far more powerful than they had imagined. Each icicle carried as much strength as a great lord. Tier 1 players had no way of blocking the attacks. Nine Dragons Emperor's people were forced out of Chilling Field's effective area. Suddenly, Phoenix Rain's team stood on one side of a massive divide, while Nine Dragons Emperor's people stood on the other. Even an expert like Martial Dragon could only stand within Chilling Field's range for a short moment before he, too, was forced out. This is a domain skill? How does he have one? Nine Dragons Emperors watched the frost-covered battlefield with a dark expression. In God's domain, large-scale destruction spells were undoubtedly the strongest in pure power, but these spells didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Normally, they were only effective in battles that consisted of tens of thousands of players. Domain skills followed closely behind large-scale destruction spells. Domain skills combined both offense and defense. Not only could they suppress one's enemies, but they were also effective against specific targets. However, players normally had to reach Tier 3 before they would find domain skills. The watching players outside of Thunder Island were stupefied. Is this a joke? He actually stopped Nine Dragons Emperor's team by himself. Just who is this Feng? For a time, everyone talked about Feng. First, he had killed Undead, who had the nickname the Devil's Hand. Then he had killed Bloodhand Yama, one of the Flower of Seven Sins representative experts. Now, he stopped 200-plus experts by himself. This was simply inconceivable. None of the 200-plus players fighting for Nine Dragons Emperor were ordinary experts. This small force was more than capable of annihilating an army of several thousand elite players. Yet they were helpless against Feng. All they could do was watch as Phoenix Rain's team moved farther and farther out of their grasp. Chapter 1498. Capturing Ancient Towers. Chapter 1498. Capturing Ancient Towers. Damn it! Nine Dragons Emperor's glare was frosty as he watched Phoenix Rain's team pull away from his own. Arranging this ambush to eliminate Phoenix Rain had taken a lot of effort, yet Feng had ruined his plans. With Feng maintaining Chilling Field in the narrow valley's center, his team couldn't pursue Phoenix Rain. Even if they launched ranged attacks, Feng would have no trouble dodging them with his speed and techniques. He didn't have the option of using a large-scale destruction spell either. Feng could easily pull away from the caster while the spell activated. In addition, Nine Dragons Emperor had already used 12 Firmaments, his strongest trump card. He would not be able to use it again for the next 10 hours. After time passed, Feng took a look at his system map. When he noticed that Phoenix Rain and the others were far enough away, he turned and sped away from the battlefield, no longer worried about distracting Nine Dragons Emperor and his people. Pavilion Master, should we give chase? Martial Dragon asked after watching Feng depart. Although Phoenix Rain's team had escaped, Shadowtooth had placed a marker on Alluring Summer during their previous fight. Hence, it was entirely possible to chase after Phoenix Rain's team. No need. They've gotten lucky this time. You and Shadowtooth will go and occupy the ancient tower. Once we group up with Miracle's team, we'll have plenty of opportunities to deal with Phoenix Rain, Nine Dragons Emperor calmly stated as he shifted his gaze to the nearby ancient tower. The main goal in this contest was to occupy Thunder Island's various monster encampments. However, there were a limited number of encampments on the island. With so many superpowers participating in the contest, he'd be putting the cart before the horse if he chased after Phoenix Rain. Moreover, not only had Phoenix Rain lost the chance to capture the ancient towers as a result of this battle, but her team had sustained heavy damages. After such a painful setback, Phoenix Rain would have a very difficult time turning things around. Although this outcome wasn't what he had planned, he had achieved part of his goal. Understood. Martial Dragon took one last look at Feng's retreating figure before containing his killing intent. He then led a 20-man team towards the ancient tower on the side of a nearby hill. Meanwhile, the various watching superpowers had gained a new understanding of Phoenix Rain's team. This was especially true for Zero Wings Feng. Although it had only been a moment, Feng had held back over 200 experts by himself. Even the superpowers domain realm experts would struggle to replicate the feat. Feng is really unlucky. Had he joined a superpower instead of a small guild like Zero Wing, his future would have been limitless. Send someone to investigate Feng. I want to know his background. Nine Dragons Emperor is ruthless. Although Phoenix Rain still has her core combatants, over 70% of the island's ancient towers have already been captured. She'll have no choice but to wait until the next contest. After the battle between Phoenix Rain and Nine Dragons Emperor's teams, the various superpowers returned their attention to capturing ancient towers and raiding monster encampments. While some teams pitted the Phoenix Pavilion Master, some celebrated her misfortune. The first few minutes were the most important in the contest. Thunder Island's ancient towers were easily defensible. Once players captured an ancient tower, other players would have a challenging time trying to steal it. Without dispatching a force that was several times stronger than the defenders, the ancient towers were impossible to take. Hence, the participating superpowers' final achievements were usually decided during the first few minutes. Moreover, among the various superpowers, Phoenix Rain's overall combat power ranked the weakest. After all, unlike the other superpowers, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had split its forces. After Phoenix Rain and her companions escaped, they searched for an unoccupied ancient tower while waiting for their dead teammates to resurrect. Finally, after 10 minutes or so of searching, one of the scouting assassins found an unclaimed tower at the edge of a bay. Phoenix Rain immediately led her team to capture it. The team spent around 10 minutes clearing out the dozen or so level 55 Lord-ranked savage orcs before they captured the ancient tower. Big Sis Rain, I've just received news from our men outside of Thunder Island. All 39 ancient towers have been captured. I'm afraid we've lost our chance to secure a second tower, Blue Phoenix reported helplessly. What's the situation on Nine Dragons Emperor's side? Phoenix Rain asked, frowning. She hadn't expected the other superpowers to take action so quickly that she wouldn't even have the opportunity to capture a second tower. Thunder Island's monster encampments were no trivial matter. Without tools or berserk skills, taking down ordinary Grand Lords of the same level would be extremely difficult, not to mention Thunder Island's Grand Lords. The defense and magic resistance a single tower provided wouldn't likely be enough to help them capture a monster encampment, even if they worked together. They needed the weakening effects of two ancient towers. With the help of Miracle, Nine Dragons Emperor has captured 3 ancient towers. His team is already preparing to raid a monster encampment, Blue Phoenix said. She then sent Phoenix Rain a statistics chart and continued, these are the forces he is guarding the 3 towers. He's allocated 102 players in total. 42 people are guarding the tower closest to us. Nine Dragons Emperor isn't taking any chances. Phoenix Rain revealed a bitter smile as she read the information. She had planned to attack one of Nine Dragons Emperor's ancient towers after she recovered her forces, but it seemed that was no longer possible. They would have to run for nearly 15 minutes to reach the closest tower. Although only 42 people defended the tower, the party included Blood Dragon, the branch guild leader of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Black Dragon Empire branch guild. With the defender's advantage, her team wouldn't be able to take the tower unless it attacked with everything it had. If they wanted to attack the second closest ancient tower, they'd need roughly 23 minutes to reach it. Moreover, they'd have to pass by Blood Dragon's tower during the run. They wouldn't be able to avoid Nine Dragons Emperor's detection. He'd easily be able to send reinforcements to the second tower before they reached it. No matter what they did, they wouldn't be able to steal one of Nine Dragons Emperor's ancient towers. And taking a tower from another superpower was impossible. All of the other competitors already knew her team's predicament. Hence, they had intentionally dispatched more manpower to defend the towers close to her team, strengthening their fortifications beyond what Nine Dragons Emperor could manage. To put it simply, her team had lost any chance of securing a monster encampment during this contest. As he read the collected information, Feng suddenly commented, We're not completely out of options. We still have a chance. Phoenix Rain took another look at the report in her hands, but even after reading through it again, she couldn't find an ancient tower that her team could raid. What about this tower? Feng said as he pointed to one of Nine Dragons Emperor's ancient towers, the farthest from their current location. That one. Phoenix Rain had initially been excited to hear that they still had a chance, but after seeing the ancient tower Feng had pointed at, she was speechless. Although only 25 players are defending that tower, it'll take us 30 minutes to reach it. By the time we arrive, Nine Dragons Emperor's reinforcements would have beaten us there. We'll never be able to capture the tower. No, we won't just target one tower. We'll capture two of his ancient towers simultaneously, Feng said, chuckling as he shook his head. Capture two towers? Phoenix Rain looked at Feng's grin in confusion. For a moment, she wondered if the man had lost his mind after Nine Dragons Emperor's provocation. Big brother Feng, you know the advantages players get after capturing a tower. Not only will allies near the towers receive a buff to their basic attributes, but they'll also receive a damage reduction buff. With our current combat power, we'll be fortunate to capture one tower. We just don't have the power to capture two at once, Blue Phoenix stated as she pointed at the magic barrier around each of the ancient towers. How will we know if we don't try? Feng said, chuckling. To accomplish the contest's objectives, one had to have a lot of team members. At this stage of the game, it was likely that no one understood Thunder Island's contest better than he did. Furthermore, he had a strategic tool to capture the ancient towers. He had wanted to avoid using it, but since Nine Dragons Emperor had ruined his plans, he didn't mind teaching the man the cost of doing so. Chapter 1499, Siege Tactic. Chapter 1499, Siege Tactic. After listening to Feng's proposal, Phoenix Rain fell silent for some time. Trying to capture two ancient towers simultaneously was pushing the envelope with their current team. If they failed, their team's overall combat power would decrease once again, and capturing a tower later would become even more difficult. However, without three ancient towers, they had no guarantee of capturing a monster encampment. For a moment, Phoenix Rain was wrought with indecision. If we don't make a move soon, it'll be even more difficult to capture an encampment, Feng reminded her when he saw the hesitation in Phoenix Rain's eyes. Like the ancient towers, there were a limited number of monster encampments on Thunder Island. There were only 17 encampments in this contest. Now that the various superpowers had occupied the ancient towers, the encampments would be their next target. If they remained idle, doing nothing and allowing the other superpowers to capture and occupy the encampments, they'd lose any chance they currently had. Once a team captured a monster encampment, NPCs would manifest to help the players defend it, making it many times more difficult to raid than an ancient tower. All right, I'll pass you the team's leadership. I'll do everything I can to assist you, Phoenix Rain said, gritting her teeth. In the end, she decided to gamble on her fate. Moreover, she was curious about how Feng planned to wrestle control of two ancient towers from Nine Dragons Emperor. When Phoenix Rain agreed, Feng began to prepare. Any team that secured an ancient tower on Thunder Island would receive a stackable buff that decreased monsters' defense and magic resistance in the encampments when attacked. At the same time, allies within 100 yards of the captured tower would receive an extra buff that increased their basic attributes and reduced incoming damage by 30%. Hence, defending players were very difficult to deal with. In addition, every team in the contest had allies outside the island to help them keep track of enemies' movements. If an enemy team showed any intention of attacking a particular tower, the team would bolster its defense and dispatch reinforcements. This made it even more difficult to steal an occupied ancient tower. Fortunately, these hurdles were nothing to Feng. Phoenix Pavilion Master, you'll lead 80 players to assault Nine Dragon Emperor's nearest ancient tower. Try to avoid fighting within 100 yards of the tower. You just need to keep the defenders busy. I'll lead a team of 100 to circle the tower and ambush the tower in the forest. The remaining 40 players will stay here and defend this area. If you're all right with this plan, we'll move out right away, Feng said. His teammates were speechless when they heard Feng's plan. They had assumed that he'd reveal some heaven-defying idea that would allow them to capture both towers at once. But his plan seemed overly simple. Big Brother Feng, I'm afraid that Nine Dragons Emperor will discover our members too quickly. He'll almost certainly dispatch reinforcements to the forest tower. Capturing the tower will likely, Blue Phoenix said worriedly. Relax. Since Nine Dragons Emperor is busy capturing an encampment, he won't have many players to send if he sends any at all. Stealing the towers won't be an issue, Feng said. But everyone fell silent. The tower's terrain advantage was no laughing matter. They couldn't overcome the hurdle with a small numerical advantage. All right, since no one else has any arguments, let's move out. Time waits for no man. Feng then formed a 100-man team and made his way towards his target. Big Sis Rain, if we go along with this plan, I'm afraid that, Blue Phoenix said anxiously as she watched Feng depart. Let's see what he has in mind for now. If it isn't possible, we can always join up with his team and concentrate on a single location, Phoenix Rain said, sighing. She had handed Feng authority over the team. She couldn't reject his plan without trying it. I understand, Blue Phoenix said after giving the matter some more thought. At this point, they had no choice. Following which, Phoenix Rain led a team of 80 players towards the nearest ancient tower under Nine Dragons Emperor's control, hoping that her team could cause enough commotion to distract the man and luring as many players as possible. This way, Feng's side would have a greater chance of succeeding. After Phoenix Rain and Feng's teams moved out, Nine Dragons Emperor, who was busy raiding a monster encampment, received news of their movements from his scouts outside of Thunder Island. Phoenix Rain is finally making a move? Nine Dragons Emperor muttered when he received the report. After reading it, however, he was confused. What is she trying to do? She dares to split her forces? Does she really think that I won't notice? Nine Dragons Emperor wasn't surprised in the least to learn that Phoenix Rain aimed to capture the ancient towers under his control. After all, among the nearby towers, his were the least fortified. He had done that on purpose. He had 350 players on his team. With the buffs from the 3 ancient towers, he only needed 100 players to capture a monster encampment, leaving the remaining 250 to defend the towers. He had only left 102 players to defend them to give Phoenix Rain the illusion of hope. Once she took his bait, he'd send the remaining 148 players to form a pincer attack, eliminating Phoenix Rain from the contest. However, he had never imagined that she'd split her forces, thinning her already low combat power. Pavilion Master, shall I lead a team to the towers? Martial Dragon suggested. No. Let's wait for now. Contact Miracle and tell them to get ready. Once Feng's team reach the other tower, you'll meet up with Miracle's forces to surround them. I refuse to believe they can get away this time. Nine Dragons Emperor growled, sneering. Understood. Martial Dragon nodded. He then contacted Miracle's upper echelons. Time passed quickly. While Phoenix Rain's team tried to attract Nine Dragons Emperor's forces to the first tower, Feng's team inched closer to the tower hidden in the forest. Feng, Nine Dragons Emperor, has dispatched a force to your tower. Some of Miracle's members are heading your way as well. Overall, 300 players are marching towards the forest tower. They should reach the tower in roughly 5 minutes. You need to get out of there. Phoenix Rain warned the swordsman, her anxiety written all over her face. Even if they fought in the forest, Nine Dragons Emperor and Miracle's over 300 players could easily annihilate Feng's 100-man team. Nine Dragons Emperor's done sitting still, huh? Feng responded, revealing a calm smile. Guild leader, you're still in the mood to smile? We're talking about 300+ experts. If it comes down to a fight, we'll suffer heavy losses even with a few Tier 2 players, Aqua Rose said, flabbergasted when she saw Feng's calm. Since Nine Dragons Emperor is finally taking us seriously, we should do the same, Feng said, chuckling. He then activated the Aura of Space's second activatable skill, Spatial Gate. His destination was none other than the farthest ancient tower under Nine Dragons Emperor's control. It was also the tower with only 25 players defending it. Everyone get in the gate. It's time we teach Nine Dragons Emperor the price of targeting us. While tools were prohibited during the contest, weapons and equipment's teleportation skills were not. Hence, he could freely teleport around Thunder Island. In fact, he could even teleport off of the island. Unfortunately, he'd need a new Thunder Pass to re-enter if he did so. Seeing the spatial gate, realization struck Aqua Rose and the others. Since tools were prohibited, players had to rely on their own capabilities to travel around Thunder Island. A skill like Teleportation Gate was godly in this contest. Upon Feng's command, the 100-man team entered the Teleportation Gate. In the next moment, they appeared before an ancient tower on the edge of a cliff. When the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion members defending the tower saw Feng's team, they were stupefied. "Crap! We're being ambushed. Quickly notify the Pavilion Master." A level 47 ranger, who reacted very quickly, shouted. However, as the ranger finished speaking, towering pillars of fire rose up from the ground, enveloping a large fraction of the defending players. The instant the flames touched the players, their bodies fell to ash. This move was none other than Feng's flame domain. When the flame domain dissipated, less than 10 of the 25 players remained standing. Chapter 1500 Unstoppable Yi Feng. Chapter 1500 Unstoppable Yi Feng. In one of the monster encampments on Thunder Island, the Team 9 Dragons Emperor-led cleared out the savage orcs in the encampment's outer region. There were far more orcs in the monster encampments than in the ancient towers. The encampment 9 Dragons Emperor raided easily had over 2,000 savage orcs, and they all wore armor and carried both a spear and bow. Walls of stone and wood protected the encampment, and dozens of watchtowers with ballistas were stationed at regular intervals along the walls. Moreover, all of the orcs were level 55 and above, and the weakest among them was chieftain rank. A level 60 specialized Grand Lord even stood in the center of the encampment. The quantity and quality of the monsters even forced 9 Dragons Emperor's expert team to move carefully lest they attract too many monsters at a time. While 9 Dragons Emperor commanded his team to attack a watchtower, a shout suddenly came through the team chat. "Pavilion Master, we're in trouble. Someone's ambushed our tower. We need reinforcements." "An ambush? Who is it? How many people do they have?" 9 Dragons Emperor's expression darkened. Angrily, he shouted, "Didn't any of the scouts warn of the attack?" To guarantee the safety of his towers, he had tasked over a dozen people outside of Thunder Island to scout for movement around the towers. Yet, despite his scouts, his least defended tower had been ambushed. He wanted nothing more than to crack open his scouts' heads to see what occupied their empty skulls. "Pavilion Master," the team appeared suddenly. "Yi Feng is the team's leader. We're outnumbered. We can't hold on for much longer." "Yi Feng? How? Wasn't his team heading for the forest tower?" 9 Dragons Emperor's expression was dubious when he heard the news. However, he saw the truth of it when he watched the live stream that his subordinate had sent. Before 9 Dragons Emperor could say more, Feng appeared before the reporting ranger, the swordsman's 2 blades easily slitting the ranger's neck. Although the ranger had unsheathed a short sword to defend himself, Feng was simply too fast. The ranger had been struck numerous times before he could even raise his short sword. Following which, the live stream disconnected and the screen faded to black. It was obvious that Feng had killed the reporting ranger. How did Yi Feng get all the way over there? Questions plagued 9 Dragons Emperor's mind as he stared at the dark screen. He had recently sent Martial Dragon to surround Feng at the forest tower, yet the swordsman had appeared at the cliff tower, over 10 minutes away, a few minutes later. This sudden development was inconceivable. However, the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion Master quickly snapped out of his daze, realizing the severity of the matter. Hurriedly, he contacted Martial Dragon and commanded, "Martial, head to the cliff tower immediately." "Why? Weren't we supposed to surround Yi Feng's team?" Martial Dragon asked. "Don't ask. Just hurry over there. Yi Feng is leading an assault on that tower. The defenders there won't hold on much longer." Urgency and anxiety tore at 9 Dragons Emperor. He had only stationed 25 players at the cliff tower. Feng could easily capture it with 50 to 60 players. Understood. When Martial Dragon saw 9 Dragons Emperor's panic, he realized the severity of the matter. He immediately commanded his team to change course for the cliff tower. However, a few seconds after Martial Dragon gave the command, everyone on 9 Dragons Emperor's team lost 1 stack of their tower buffs, leaving them with only 2. Nine Dragons Emperor's expression twisted in rage. The thread of hope he had clung onto had been destroyed. What Nine Dragons Emperor did not know was that, among the 25 players defending the ancient tower, Feng's flame domain had killed over 15 instantly. Meanwhile, Feng led a 100-man team. Even if the defenders had the 30% buff to their basic attributes and damage reduction, they were outnumbered. Furthermore, Feng had multiple Tier 2 players on his side. Even with the buff, the tower defender's basic attributes were nothing compared to Feng and his companions. Yi Feng, Nine Dragons Emperor bellowed as the live stream replayed in his mind. He knew every trump card Phoenix Rain possessed, and none of those trump cards allowed players to cross such a large distance in such a short amount of time. The sudden arrival of Feng's team had to be the swordsman's doing. Without the team's 3 tower buffs, it would become extremely difficult to capture a monster encampment. It might even be impossible. Aside from the specialized Grand Lord in the heart of the encampment, they also had to deal with 4 ordinary Grand Lords beside it. Without the 3 stacks of defense and magic resistance weakening, his team couldn't deal enough damage to the bosses with their attributes. Everyone listen up. Aside from the players defending the ancient towers, all of you will follow me to the cliff tower. Nine Dragons Emperor announced after taking in a deep breath. Marshal, notify Miracle's members and have them gather there as well. I refuse to believe that Yi Feng can face us all. Although he had lost the ancient tower, he still had the numerical advantage. Even if Feng had over 100 players, he could still recapture the tower. Elsewhere, when Phoenix Rain, who currently distracted Nine Dragons Emperor's subordinates, saw her tower buff increase by a stack, she was stunned. What? He actually succeeded. Phoenix Rain could not believe her eyes when she saw her status window, but when she read the latest update on Nine Dragons Emperor's movements, her joy fell away. Hurriedly, she warned her companion through the team chat, Yi Feng, Nine Dragons Emperor is furious. He's gathering all available manpower to your location. Miracle's members are heading your way as well. We estimate that around 400 players are moving towards you. You can't defend the tower. You need to retreat. Although Feng's achievement delighted her, the difference between the two sides' strength was massive. She had to admit that little tricks like this were meaningless in the face of absolute power. It's fine. Let them come, Feng said, smiling faintly when he read the report. Right, your side should get ready. This situation might be troublesome if you weren't on Thunder Island, but players couldn't achieve victory here with a larger army. Get ready for what? Is there some way we can help? Phoenix Rain asked. No. Prepare to capture your tower, Feng stated indifferently. Phoenix Rain was speechless. The tower before her was defended by 42 players. Moreover, Blood Dragon led the defense. Although she had 80 players, they could never capture the tower before Nine Dragons Emperor's reinforcements arrived. Relax. I'll help you with it, Feng said. Help us. Phoenix Rain was stunned. For a moment, she even thought she had heard wrong. Feng had enough issues on his side. How could he help her? Although she found Feng's words hard to believe, a part of her couldn't just dismiss them. Of the man's multiple insane declarations thus far, he had never once failed to carry them out. When I tell you to attack, strike with everything you've got. Leave the rest to me, Feng instructed. My side still needs to prepare. Try to lure as many people out of the tower as possible in the meantime. Phoenix Rain had no response. There simply wasn't anything she could say about his simple approach, yet the way Feng had spoken about the plan made it seem as if the decision had been obvious. After a moment of silence, she sighed and said, I understand. I'll have my men lure them out. The minutes flew by. While Nine Dragons Emperor and Miracle's combined team of 400-plus players rushed towards Feng's ancient tower, he took his sweet time resting. Once Flame Domain's cooldown finished, he told Phoenix Rain, attack. Not giving the matter much thought, Phoenix Rain led her 80-man team in a charge against Blood Dragon's tower. Phoenix Rain, you are courting death. When Blood Dragon saw Phoenix Rain's team dash towards him, he prepared his team for battle. At the same time, he opened a communication window to contact Nine Dragons Emperor. Just as Blood Dragon was about to report this new development, a figure appeared in the sky. The figure was none other than Feng, who had appeared using the Aura of Space's first activatable skill, Space Movement. Before anyone could react, Feng used Flame Domain once again. The towering pillars of fire burned over half of the defending team to death. Only a dozen or so players, who had reacted quickly, escaped the AoE in time. After using Flame Domain, Feng appeared before Blood Dragon. Phantom Kill. Flame Burst. Using Flame Burst alongside his doppelganger, even the skillful Blood Dragon was powerless against Feng. Although Blood Dragon had instinctively activated his life-saving skill, each attack from Flame Burst dealt tens of thousands of damage. In the blink of an eye, Blood Dragon's corpse sprawled at Feng's feet. The enemy players were stupefied. Their chain of command descended into chaos. Very quickly, Phoenix Rain's members annihilated their enemies. When Nine Dragons' Emperor and his people were roughly 10 minutes from the cliff tower, they noticed that they had lost another tower buff stack. What is going on? What happened? Confusion colored Nine Dragons' Emperor's expression as he looked at his status window. Pavilion Master, Feng appeared and attacked Branch Guild leader Blood Dragon's tower a moment ago. One of the scouts outside of Thunder Island cautiously informed him. Chapter 1501 Reversal. Chapter 1501 Reversal. Nine Dragons' Emperor's expression darkened when he heard the scout's report. He had wanted to deal a devastating blow to Phoenix Rain and eliminate her from the contest. Yet not only had he lost 2 of his 3 ancient towers, but his team had also suffered over 60 casualties. If the other superpowers knew this, he'd become a laughingstock. Good. Very good. Killing intent flashed in Nine Dragons' Emperor's eyes as he watched a battle video his scout had recorded. Since you want to play, let's play. I'll teach you the meaning of digging your own grave. Pavilion Master, should we send a team to recapture Blood Dragon's tower? Martial Dragon asked when he saw the fury on Nine Dragons' Emperor's face. No. We'll head to the cliff tower. We'll reclaim that tower first, then we'll take care of Phoenix Rain's team. Tell our resurrected members to gather at the forest tower. I won't let Feng steal another. Nine Dragons' Emperor commanded. He had to admit that Feng's teleportation skill was heaven-defying on Thunder Island, and the fact that he had a large-scale destruction spell only complemented his ability to teleport. At the end of the day, however, there was still a massive difference between their team's strength. As long as he approached the situation slowly and steadily, Feng wouldn't have an opportunity to steal another tower. Meanwhile, the various superpowers on Thunder Island were shocked to hear that Nine Dragons' Emperor had lost 2 ancient towers in a row. What? Nine Dragons' Emperor actually lost 2 of his towers? Could this be a ploy to lure Phoenix Rain into a trap? The contest for Thunder Island had many restrictions. There were also the tower buffs and the scouts outside of the island to consider. Stealing 1 occupied tower was incredibly difficult, yet Phoenix Rain's team had stolen 2 of Nine Dragons' Emperor's towers in a row. When the various superpowers received this news, they wondered about the information's validity. Guild leader, Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing have obtained 3 ancient towers. They should have no problems securing a monster encampment. Should we contact Phoenix Rain and reopen negotiations? Quiet Melody suggested to Eternal Dead after receiving the shocking report. It seems that I really have underestimated them. However, the battle has just begun. Nine Dragons' Emperor is no easy opponent, and Miracle's been poking its nose into the matter. They'll only qualify to negotiate with us if they can hold a monster encampment until the contest ends, Eternal Dead said, showing his lack of interest with a wave of his hand. Phoenix Rain only controlled a portion of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's combat power, and even the guild's combined strength was no match for the Sacred Temple. There was no need to mention Zero Wing. It was merely a guild that occupied a single kingdom. To the Sacred Temple, Zero Wing was no different than ordinary large guilds. They still don't qualify? After giving the matter some thought, Quiet Melody agreed with Eternal Dead's estimation. Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing's performance was indeed shocking. But that performance only proved that they had potential. Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing had yet to display sufficient value. There was no way that the Sacred Temple and Battle Wolves would treat Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing like potential partners. Only when Phoenix Rain and Zero Wing could survive on Thunder Island would they qualify to negotiate with the 2 super guilds. As the various superpowers watched, Nine Dragons' Emperor's team finally reached the cliff tower, sealing off all paths leading to it. Overall, 400 players surrounded the tower. Not only did the team include 9 Dragon's Emperor's experts, but Miracle's experts had joined them as well. The leader of Miracle's team was none other than the sword freak, Miracle Dragon. He had already reached level 49 and wore the Hellfire set, a 6-piece, level 50, fine gold set equipment for swordsmen. He was eye-catching among the crowd. Level 50 secret silver set equipment was incredibly rare in God's domain, not to mention level 50 fine gold set equipment. Even Martial Dragon and Shadowtooth gazed at Miracle Dragon's Hellfire set in envy. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had yet to secure a complete level 50 fine gold set equipment. Miracle's prowess was obvious. Upon these players' arrival, Gentle Snow and the other who had stayed behind to defend the cliff tower felt a significant pressure. Although the tower increased their basic attributes and reduced incoming damage by 30%, they were at an overwhelming numerical disadvantage. They were about to face so many more enemies than they had in the previous ambush. Suddenly, Feng appeared in the top of the tower with space movement. As Spatial Gate was still on cooldown, he couldn't transport other players to or from the cliff tower. Not only had his return calmed Zero Wing's nervous members, but it had also caused a stir among 9 Dragon's Emperor's troops. Feng, you dare to stand before me again. You might have gotten away last time, but you won't be so lucky again. 9 Dragon's Emperor bellowed when he saw Feng in the top of the tower. He then commanded, "Everyone attack." Hearing the order, all 400-plus team members charged for the ancient tower. Occupying a tower was simple. As long as none of the original occupants were within 100 yards of the tower, control would fall to whichever team was in range. Hence, 9 Dragon's Emperor's team didn't need to break into the tower. They just needed to eliminate Feng and the other players from Zero Wing. In the seconds before both sides clashed, Feng switched the aura of space to the aura of illusion. He also equipped the Thunder Emblem. Suddenly, 9 Dragon's Emperor and the others felt an indescribable pressure weigh down on them before their basic attributes began to decrease rapidly. Very quickly, their attributes fell from 100% to 85%. The abrupt change confused 9 Dragon's Emperor and his people. Kill them. Annihilate them all. Feng commanded as the enemy's attributes fell. As long as the aura of illusion was active, the ability would reduce all enemies' basic attributes by 40% within a 200-yard radius. However, since players had some resistances to the effect, the decrease was limited. Fortunately, the Thunder Emblem also reduced nearby enemies' basic attributes. Only after combining the abilities was he able to reduce his enemy's basic attributes by 15%. Normally, this 15% reduction might not offer much of an advantage, but his team also had the Ancient Towers buff. The new difference between the two sides' attributes was the equivalent of his players using Berserk skills against players without. Damn it! Everyone move back, get 100 yards away from the tower. 9 Dragon's Emperor urgently commanded through the team chat, his expression darkening when he realized the situation. This had effectively created a 50% difference between his team members' attributes and Zero Wing's. To make matters worse, his enemy already had a few players with monstrously high basic attributes. However, 9 Dragon's Emperor's warning was too late, as the two sides had already slammed into each other on the battlefield. The difference between the two teams was immediately apparent. Aside from Martial Dragon, Shadowtooth, Undead, Bloodhand Yama, 9 Dragon's Emperor, and Miracle Dragon, Zero Wing and Asura's experts quickly suppressed the enemy players. Even Cleansing Whistle, an expert who had yet to reach the Refinement Realm, could easily overwhelm a Refinement Realm expert of the same level. She could even hold her own against 3 Refinement Realm experts simultaneously. As for Refinement Realm experts like Lifeless Thorn, they easily killed enemy experts of the same caliber in 3 to 5 moves. Aqua Rose, Cola, and Alluring Summer, players who had completed their Tier 2 promotion, finished enemy players off in 2 moves. 1 move to break through the enemy's defenses, and a second to deal the finishing blow. It wasn't a battle, it was a one-sided massacre. At this point, Feng shifted his gaze to 9 Dragon's Emperor's retreating figure. He jumped down from the tower and dashed towards the ranger. His actions almost immediately attracted 9 Dragon's Emperor and his people's attention. Crap! He's trying to kill the pavilion master. that you're tuning in to the Blee Maze Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.